We're live.
We're live.
We're live.
Oh my gosh, we're so live.
We are so live.
Okay, so this is gonna be exciting. So hello and welcome to Hobby Vomits. My name is Ian, and this is
I'm Matt. Hello.
hello. So for a while now, we've been doing book discussions on Malazan, and we both talked. We really like the format that we're doing for those book discussions. And so we have a book club in our Discord that's been going on, and we've all been kind of reading or listening to The Devils by Joe Abercrombie. And so Matt and I were talking about this last night, and they're like, "Hey, we just finished part two of The Devils. Why don't we just do a book discussion on it? Because we both get really excited about the books whenever we have these discussions. It'll be a great way to kind of build up some hype. The other people in the book club, they can watch the video and get caught up or kind of join in on the hype, and it just kind of makes the overall experience a lot more fun. We both did kind of feel like for The Devils, there's not as much content in any particular part of the book as there might be, like, for example, in the Gardens of the Moon or in Deadhouse Gates. And so we were kind of reading through. We got to the end of part two, and we're like, this is probably a good point that we could kind of package the content together and be able to do a discussion and really discuss it. So I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna have this discussion, obviously, and so we're gonna be discussing part one and part two. And so we'll spoil some from part one, and then we'll spoil some from part two, and have an overall discussion. And if you've read part one but not part two, we'll kind of let you know when we're about to shift over, so you can come back later and watch the video then. And then we're gonna see. So we'll read part three and see if there's enough to talk about. I was telling Matt that I kind of feel like there won't be, and so maybe we get to the end of part four, and then if that's the case, we'll do one at the end of part four. But we'll still have, like, maybe we'll get together and do like a barf video where we do a full review over the book, our total thoughts on the whole thing, and we'll kind of rate it and let you know. And that'll be like a non-spoiler and spoiler review of the book. So, Matt, did I
Nice.
miss anything?
No, I don't think so. Other than just this is there spoilers. So this is a spoiler discussion. So if you've not read the book at all, then go read it and come back when you're done with at least part one. Because we'll give you that cutoff when we're done with part one, but starting and then going into part two spoilers. But we are going to talk spoilers kind of right off the bat. So hopefully this is fun.
I think it will be.
I think it'll be fun
So,
too. Yeah.
you wanna kick us off with the premise?
Yeah, so I'm just reading the back here, I see.
Yep.
So, The Devils by Joe Abercrombie. It says, holy work sometimes requires unholy deeds. Brother Diaz has been summoned to the sacred city, where he is certain a commendation and grand holy assignment awaits him. But his new flock is made up of unrepentant murderers, practitioners of ghastly magic, and outright monsters. And the mission he is tasked with will require bloody measures from them all in order to achieve its righteous ends. Elves lurk at our borders and hunger for our flesh, while greedy princes care for nothing but their own ambitions and comfort. With a hellish journey before him, it's a good thing Brother Diaz has the devils on his side. Yeah.
Nice. And so the way that Matt kind of pitched it to me was that it was essentially going to be like almost like a Suicide Squad or a League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, but for people that it's like a fantasy series for people that are like now commissioned by the Pope.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, well, that sounds pretty cool. And so I'm glad I was able to pick this one up on Audible. Now, as we kind of get into this, I do also want to say I've never read or listened to a Joe Abercrombie book. I do really want to go do the first Law series, but I have not. Whereas as Matt has done several, I think on this at this point, and all of them have been great.
Yep. Yeah, I've done the First Law trilogy, and now I just finished up the 3 standalones of like the Great Leveler trilogy, and they're pretty much all 5 out of 5s, except for maybe the Blade itself. It's like a 4.5 out of 5. So really like Joe Abercrombie. So went into this with pretty high expectations.
Yeah, so this will be kind of fun because you'll get two different perspectives based on how much experience you have with the author. So I'm looking forward to kind of seeing Matt's thoughts on it. And we haven't really gotten to discuss it too much. We discussed a little bit of part one, but it'll be cool to jump into it.
Yeah.
So I'll go and kind of give the general sort of vibe of part one, and then we can kind of start jumping into some of the important scenes and characters.
Yeah.
And so essentially it's going to open up with this person, Brother Diaz, who we read on the premise of the book on the back cover. And so essentially the goal of part one is to introduce us to the main characters. And so we're going to introduce to Brother Diaz, to the devils themselves, and then also to sort of our MacGuffin for this fantasy story, which is Princess Alexis. And so it's kind of fun. Joe Abercrombie kind of has the princess and Brother Diaz kind of meet right off the bat, but they don't really know that they've met. So then Brother Diaz, he gets a commendation for he's now the vicar of the Church of the Holy Expediency. And so we'll talk about that more later. But basically, he's in charge of a secret order, which is the Devils. Essentially, people who have been excommunicated by the church, who have been put in chains, not only for their maybe heretical beliefs, but also just like literally for their crimes, right? Murder, necromancy, in one case just being an elf, right, and so on. So and so they're effectively held in chains, and like they're in need of redemption of some sort. And so now Brother Diaz is the vicar, and there's a lot of fun inversions and twists in all of this. But then basically they're charged with seeing Princess Alexis to the throne of Troy, because she just so happens to be one of the only remaining heirs to that throne, and the other heirs are all, for lack of a better term, just total assholes. And so the West, like nobody really wants them to be the emperors, and they're like quite literally like they're brothers, and they're just like killing each other for the throne. And so like nobody wants to see them take the throne, and so Princess Alexis, she is not princess material. She is a thief in the streets, but it's a Hail Mary, right? Can we at least get none of these guys on the throne? It's going to be dangerous. They're going to oppose her, and so the Devils, their job is to see her through.
Yep.
That's basically
real quick, I think I accidentally typed is it Alexis or Alexia? I can't remember.
It is both.
Oh, it's both. Okay, that's why.
Yeah. I believe
it's like Alex, Alexis, and Alexia.
Yeah, I believe Alex and Alexis are like informal names, and then Alexia is her formal name.
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
Alexia is her. So yeah, and I might be misremembering on Alexis, but I thought they would informally referred to her as that. But she's most commonly called Alex.
Yeah, we'll call her Alex.
Yeah,
that way we're definitely right.
That way we're definitely right. Yeah, we're at least not wrong.
That's
which is a step in the right direction.
That's right.
And so yeah, but the part one is called The Worst Princess Ever. And he's also not wrong.
He's also not wrong. Yeah, she's not a great princess. And then I think you said you were doing this via Audible, right?
I'm doing it very Audible.
And I'm also doing it Audible, but also reading along at the same time.
Now, you'll have to remind me, because I'm terrible with names, but the guy who's doing the reading.
Yes, Stephen Pacey, the GOAT.
So good.
Yeah.
So good. It's the first time I've heard him read. He is, I think, my favorite. No, he is my favorite so far. My second favorite is Stanley Serkis for Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, especially. That is, I mean, that's also kind of a peculiar thing too, because it's, like he literally is the voice of Gollum.
Yeah.
Now reading The Hobbit, but he's also just kind of an amazing voice actor too. So that's like definitely my number two. I don't know if I'd want him to like read everything, but like having him read The Hobbit it's
just right for that.
It's so good. But yeah, no, this one on Audible is awesome.
He's just like straight really up. Awesome. The way that I like pitch Stephen Pacey is like he's just straight up grandpa reading you a bedtime story material.
Yeah.
Like he really is. And he's
I like straight up need him. Like we need a new version of Princess Bride, so I can have this guy be the grandpa.
Yeah, exactly.
Can we do that, please? I mean, I love Princess Bride. Nothing could ever replace the original, but like I would be down for that.
We're in for a treat when you get into First Law, because Stephen Pacey does all of Joe Abercrombie's books.
Yeah.
And he's excellent on all the ones I've listened. I guess I've only listened to a little bit here and there. Most of Joe Abercrombie's I've read, but yeah, I mean he's just consistent.
Yeah. I'm excited, man. Yeah, he's so good.
Yeah.
So that's been a real treat. I didn't know. I went on Audible because we were reading the Malazan series, and I needed something to listen to on the way to work, because I was going to listen to Dungeon Crawler Call, but now my wife and I listened to that together. And so I was like, oh, I need something to kind of fill this space. And you were like, oh, The Devils is coming out. I'm like, oh, that'd be perfect. Like I can start getting into Joe Abercrombie. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. So that's, it's been awesome. I love listening to him on the way to and fro from work. So, okay. So where do you want to start with part one? You want to start right at the beginning, or do you have a favorite character in mind you want to look at?
Yeah, I mean, I think overall, favorite character. I do really like Brother Diaz, but I will say, so like this was one of those things that like we start with our first chapters with Brother Diaz, and so I kind of went in expecting like, all right, here's our main character, and we're gonna have a cast around our main character, but like it's kind of not really that. He's just like there really almost isn't like a main character, at least in this part. Like,
Yeah.
he starts hot and then he kind of goes in the background a little bit as we progress through the part. But I do, I think it's a perfect opening for a book because Joe Abercrombie's strengths really, but they really shine in this opening because his strength to me is his character work. That's what now you got me saying Joseph Abercrombie with the Joseph Abercrombie.
So we should explain these off-camera jokes.
Yeah.
So Matt, we work out of Asana, and so Matt has all of his notes up there, but he tries to make this easy on himself. He has this master list of like what a discussion note should be like. And so in the master notes, it always says high level overview of previous part, but we're reading, this is part 1. So I was like, there is no previous part. So I just copied the Wikipedia page for Joe Abercrombie and put that into there. And so it just opens up Joseph Edward Abercrombie.
Yeah.
And so he read that and he's like, what? Nobody
Joseph
says
Abercrombie. Yeah. But so his strengths really I find are character work. And if you've read any of his previous stuff, you probably kind of get that. And so this opens perfectly, like, right? I feel like in the first sentence, the first word spoken, I'm like, all right, I understand who Brother Diaz is. You got this holy man opening with "God damn it" 3 times, and it's just like, yep. And he's looking at like prostitutes and stuff, and it's just like, all right, Brother Diaz, I get you. And like, oh, it's so good. I love that. So yeah, I just thought it was especially I'm curious to hear what you think of like, this is your very first. I kind of knew, right? I had an idea of what Joe's style is and his humor and stuff, but like, this is a pretty interesting like first page of Joe Abercrombie that you've ever read. So what did you think of that?
No, I really liked it because I think it communicated for me at least a lot about the character. Like I felt like I could understand this character and then I could like this character. And it gave me also a lot to work with. And that's why I love it. Is like, in a way, and I don't know if this is, again, because I haven't read his other stuff, but like, it's really interesting to me because it felt like if you want to make a first impression, like you put the best foot forward.
Mm-hmm.
But it almost seems like Joe Abercrombie like puts the worst foot forward, but in the right way,
Yeah.
So it's just like you come to understand. Okay, I get what's going on with this character, and I get what we need to fix.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like that scene because I'm always watching movies with my kids, so I've been trying to get them to watch How to Train Your Dragon. There's a scene in How to Train Your Dragon. It's like, we need to work on this. He's like, you just gestured to all of me. It's just like, that's Brother Diaz. It's just like, we need to work on this.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, it's every Joe Abercrombie character. Like, they're all just shitty people, which I love it. It's nice.
Yeah.
They all have redeemable qualities, which is nice.
Right, and I think that's kind of the key thing is like, he's opening up and you're not like, oh my gosh, this person's going to get on my nerves. You're just like, okay, this is a really quirky, like goofy person. And I mean, also to be fair, like putting in the context, like trying to imagine this context. Like, first of all, it's a context we can all relate to. Not that we drive by seeing prostitutes, at least I certainly don't. But like, he's just on his way to a important meeting, running late, right? Even though he like prepared for this, and he's just freaking out because it's super important. It's like, oh my gosh, like how relatable is this? Even though it's a fantasy setting, even though it's super weird. And then it's just now I don't know if you've ever ever been to Louisiana during Mardi Gras. I have been once, and that was probably one time too many for me, but that's okay. But like the idea of like getting stuck behind like parades and like having just like people on the street doing whatever. And like the fact that it's like a feast at the same time, I wonder how much time Joe has spent in Louisiana during Mardi Gras, because this is exactly what that was like. And so I just like I could instantly relate to the character and like the kind of things they're dealing with, and it's just a lot of redeemable qualities. And for me, Brother Diaz has become my favorite character. I don't know, I think he may have started that way, but like, I'm definitely the most interested in seeing how his story goes.
Yeah.
Throughout this adventure.
He is kind of like the glue.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, which makes sense. I mean, that's what we get with this part, right? Is that he becomes, it's called the vicar.
The vicar, and so it's important to note that a vicar is not is a servant to others. So a vicar is not like a leader. They're
Okay.
not, like they really are the glue. Like so, for example, like priests have a vicar. There's a vicar of priests. Actually, the pastor, the chaplain that was pastor that married my wife and I. He was the vicar of priests for our diocese for quite some time. So he's a servant to priests. He's not a leader of priests. He's a servant to priests.
Okay.
And so I mean that's essential about Diaz is he's sort of there in a capacity we don't quite understand,
Yeah.
right? It's like
I don't think he
the
understands either.
he certainly does not understand. Like so there's this cardinal whose name I always forget. Luckily you have it put
Zizka,
down here. Zizka, right? So there's this Cardinal Zizka,
I think.
and so he's charging into town. Yeah, I'm pretty sure
It might be
Zizka, 'cause
Bach. There's two of them that are
Bach is
named.
the celestial choir.
Yeah, okay, so Jessica's the one that he meets
Yeah.
when he gets there.
So he's on this journey through basically the Vatican, and he's trying to get to a meeting which he thinks is with the Pope.
Mm-hmm.
Which of course, like, so if you're in his particular case, he's a monk. But like, if you're a member of religious order and you're being told you have a meeting with the Pope, actually, I don't care who you are. If you're being told you have a meeting with the Pope, like, you get to that meeting with the Pope, like, period. And so of course he's worried about being late, and then he gets there. It's not a meeting with the Pope. It's a meeting with this Cardinal Zizka, who's then like, hey, look, by the way, this thing you've been trying to do now for quite some time, like to basically get out of your abbey to get to a position of authority. I have the perfect position for you. It's called the Vicar of the Church of the Holy Expediency.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all you need to know for now. Best of luck, right?
He's pretty hyper about it at first, right? Because and I think it's notable that like he hasn't really been working his way up.
Ethically.
Yes, yeah, exactly, perfect. Ethically, so he's like kind of cheated and squirmed his way to get this invitation, and so he's all like stoked about it. And then he's like, "Wow, I'm gonna be a vicar. Wow, that's nice.
Yeah.
Okay, I've earned it." And then it just dissolves into madness.
It does. And then it's so great because he's talking it up how he's been like scheming. And like this is what's so great about the intro. It's just like he's talking it up. Then he gets there and he's like, ooh, and then he finds out what it is. And he's like, he starts backpedaling. He's like, no. When I said that like I had been like working on a whole new program for the Abbey, all I meant was like I organized a few books in the library. Like,
he's like, I'm awful. I'm horrible for this job. Yeah. They're like, no, actually, I think you're perfect for this job.
At one point, he's just like, "Are all of my brothers playing a practical joke on me for all the things I've done to them? Is that what this is?"
Yeah, this is very funny. So yeah, then I mean, I think maybe we loop back to Alex in a second. Let's continue on with Brother Diaz of like when so in this room with the cardinal, he meets two people as well, Jakob.
Yep.
And Baptiste.
Baptiste, yep. Baptiste of everything and everywhere.
Yeah, everything and everywhere, exactly. And so we don't really know who they are at first. Well, I think Jakob is introduced as the keeper. At some point, right?
Diaz recognizes immediately that he's likely a crusader.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of wears that on his sleeve, so to speak. So, but Baptiste, we don't really.
Yeah, she's just kind of there.
She's just kind of there. We do get kind of a sense of her humor, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't really know like what she's about, and so it's kind of ominous, right? I mean, like not only to be surprised at a meeting, so to speak, you're meeting with the cardinal rather when you thought you were meeting the Pope, but then all of a sudden there's these other two people there, and you don't know what they're about, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it creates for a very interesting interaction.
Yeah. And then they kind of go down, and he gets to meet who he's joining, which is a fun introduction to the rest of our main cast, or kind of the rest of our main cast.
Now we should, or at least I like to mention one thing real quick. One thing that's kind of interesting about this whole construction is, so like in this is sort of an alternate universe, like very alternate, right? In addition to just being fantasy. But basically in their faith, they have 12 virtues. And so then there's like an order for each virtue. And so, this is kind of one of the fun things is like there's a lot of things that are very like they're like kind of a flip or like alternate to like what we have in the Catholic Church today. Like a lot of things are just flipped. But like in the Catholic Church, there are like rites and orders under the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church isn't just one flavor; there are many different flavors. I don't know how many. It's like many, many. But like basically, they do the same thing.
Chocolate,
There's like 12
vanilla,
virtues. Yeah, there's definitely lots
strawberry,
of that. Yeah, yeah. There's Neapolitan.
Neapolitan. There we
We
go.
gave you Neapolitan, man. Okay, that's from Italy. Um, so but yeah, and so there's these like 12 virtues, and so there's like these 12 rites or orders or like churches, and for each of the virtues. And so the Church of the Holy Expediency is like the 13th virtue, and she's like, yeah, we don't talk about that one very much,
Yeah.
you know. But when you need it, you need it, and
Hmm.
so he's this like vicar for this like secret rite within the church,
Yeah.
and so like that's how his whole setup. So it's kind of fun and kind of gives another ominous thing of like, wait, hold on, what aren't you telling me?
Yeah.
And that's the devils.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so we're led down into this dungeon, this set of
Yeah.
jail
Straight up a
cells,
dungeon.
and the first thing we see is just like this, just butt naked, man. I don't know if they actually said like where he's from.
Yeah.
But yeah, Pacey does a great job with his voice. But he's just like naked in a cell, and they're like, "Why is he naked?" And they're like, "Because if we give him anything, he tries to draw on it." You know?
Yep. He will write on it.
Yeah, yeah,
He's
and
creative in his methods as well.
yeah, very very creative.
Oh, sorry. So, yeah, I'll jump in. So,
Yeah, go
the other thing that we got kind of, which was interesting with before they kind of go down, I think Cardinals just kind of sets the scene of like, right, our church. There's a church of the West and there's a church of the East. They are the church of the West, and then the church of the East. Basically, she kind of lets Brother Diaz know that like they employ some shady practices that. But then she's like, yeah. So the only way to fight that is with some shady practices of our own. And I think Brother Diaz, he even like, I think he even says like with devils or something like that. He even like calls it, and
Mhm.
that's when he starts being like, I don't know, but yeah. So we can talk. Well, I think we should at some point talk a little bit more about the church and just what's going on politically. But yeah. So we've got our butt naked sorcerer. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
magician.
Magician. Yeah, it's one of the top three, by the way, sir. So,
Yep.
show a little bit of respect. But yeah, no, he's my second favorite character, even though he can be super annoying. But he's the other one I love reading about because he's got this whole gimmick. And I think that this kind of touches on one thing like I do want to get to at some point in this video, which is one of the things that I see could be like a break for certain people is that I do see this as a kind of a table, like a shelf stalker. I think I use that in my weekly retro, but kind of a shelf stalker fantasy in the sense like imagine you get like a really good fantasy book and you're going to put that on the shelf, right? But if you put a really great book on an empty shelf, it looks terrible. So you got to have like other books on the shelf that you can like frame around this one. And so that's where you get like the idea of like shelf stalker, right? They're not going to be very good. They're just going to be there to be there, but they like count as fantasy. And I think what's fun about this is that Joe Abercrombie has taken that kind of style of fantasy where it can be very tropic and very like gimmicky, but he's told it with this interesting character work and in this sort of self-aware style with good inversions that make it really fun and make it stand apart from a lot of those, at least certainly in my opinion.
Yeah.
So like an example of that gimmick is with Balthazar. He can never just say his first name.
I was say
It's
that's not his name. That's
yeah,
not his name.
it's, I am Balthazar Sham Evam Draxi. Right, right off the bat, we get that. It's not even just that he's not a sorcerer but a magician, but like you better say his name right, and nobody can get either one right. It's so infuriating for him.
Yep.
Yeah, and just like the times that they'll bring it back up in the book, it just gets me every time.
Yep. Me too. Yeah. It's very funny, and it's interesting too because he's the first person we see, the first devil we see, and it's notable that he just happens to be the newest devil of the crew. He's a new recruit just thrown in there, so we're kind of discovering what's going on through him a little bit. And so, yeah, he's butt naked because he's been trying to write. That is how magicians operate in this world, is that they write their runes down. They have to write out their spell. They can't just, like, say something. Like, I think that's what a sorcerer is. They can just say their spell or whatever. But magicians, they study they memorize, and it's drawing runes and stuff down to, to the T. It's got to be perfect. But that's like his craft. And so they take away, I think at some point they say that he was trying to write with his feces. And so that's why he's just straight up naked. There's nothing in his cell to write with. And so that's basically where we're at with him. And yeah, I was saying that he's the newest as well. Brand new.
Yep.
Brand new devil. Because, so he's pissed.
And so and we'll learn why he's brand new a little bit later, because there is an interesting scene here, and I'm trying to remember if it was hinted at in part 1 or part 2, but I believe it was hinted in part 1 as to what happened with Viga's cell. But going back to Balthazar, I think it's worth knowing. Yeah, he is the newest one. I don't think we mentioned what he does. We mentioned he's a magician, but there's different arts. He's a necromancer.
Yes.
And he was specifically caught making the dead dance. And so he was practicing his art as almost like a performer in a way.
Yep.
But very much, he was, he's always been trying to like perfect his art, but that's his specialty, is necromancy.
Yep.
Which is very like kind of a neat little twist on things. But he's of course he's our newest, but he's only one of the many.
Yep.
Then we have a few others that are in jail cells, but the other one that surprises us is notably Sunny, who is an elf. And I think that she actually might come last, but I want to mention her because she's the other really, really interesting character who we do get to learn more about as the story goes on. But yeah, she's an elf, and so she's the first elf that we actually get to see, and they're intended to be quite strange. They're almost like they're actually like more closely related to like the depiction of like Norse elves than they are like your classic fantasy elves. Like they do have like the long ears, but they're very like awkwardly shaped.
They look like
and they're meant to look really weird.
Let's say so on the map here.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's an elf, which is terrifying. Kind of looks like a bat, but then also, which by the way, I mean, just beautiful artwork.
It's so good.
But right here, I think, this is Sunny. So it doesn't look quite like that elf on the map, but
still a bit freaky.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they didn't notice her at first because Sunny has this unique ability that she can go invisible.
Yep.
And this is actually one of the things that we did discuss a little bit. We were like, can all elves go invisible? And I was like, I think if all elves could go invisible, I think they would all already be dead. Like, I think everyone would have lost the war, right? Because you can't fight an army of people that could just go invisible at will. So, so it seemed like it would be something that's kind of like unique to Sunny, that she can like go invisible. But we have an elf that can go invisible, and she has kind of like a fun, like dry sense of humor.
It's very blunt.
She's very very blunt, very literal, which is also really, really cool. But we'll also get to learn that not only can she go invisible, but she just has like better senses. She's like more agile. She can hear further. She can see further. So she does have those sort of superhuman qualities that like we expect of like elves in fantasy, or at least like in more like Tolkien-esque fantasy.
Yep.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and then there's some old man in the third cell that it just starts chatting with Brother Diaz. And he's just chatting, having a nice little conversation, and then kind of, I think Jakob is like, "Hey, hold on there," and like Brother Diaz comes to, and he's like face to face at the cell, like offering his arm in or something like that. I can't remember exactly what he's doing. Basically, offering himself to our last character we meet here, our vampire.
Yeah, Baron Ricard.
The Baron.
Of course. Which it's a funny introduction because as soon as Brother Diaz meets Baron Ricard, he's just like, oh, a baron. Like, he's like, he has this moment where he's like, I'm in the presence of nobility. Finally, something a little bit normal.
Yeah.
Right. And then the guy's like, no, actually, I'm a vampire. Like, and then, Diaz like figures out that he's been ensorcelled and that Baron Ricard was going to take a little bit of blood from him. There's also, I didn't really think about it until we mentioned it, but, one thing that's kind of fascinating is, and we see this a couple times, but like, Jakob seems to be somewhat immune to a lot of these things, which I didn't really think about until now. But like, I think in every single scene with Baron Ricard or other ones, he just doesn't appear to be affected at all.
It seems like to me, it's almost like the Baron can choose. Seems
Yeah,
like.
and that's what I'm wondering because I don't know if it's necessarily been the case that like he's immune to other effects,
Hmm.
but like particularly the Baron. But so here's kind of what I'm wondering, right? Is I'm kind of wondering, and maybe we should have predictions, but I'm kind of wondering if the reason why Jakob is like immune quote quote is that the Baron won't try to ensorcel Jakob because maybe you don't want to drink the blood of a, you know, of that particular person.
Yeah. I mean, we can
And
talk
so
about that, right? That happens, and
that,
we find
yeah,
out about Jakob in part one.
yep, yeah. So the end of part one, we find out that Jakob he can't die.
Yep.
Period. Flat out.
And that just, in
Cannot
fact,
die.
he is actually one of the devils.
And that's the cool twist that
Hmm.
actually both Jakob and Baptiste
Hmm.
are both also members of the Devils.
Yep.
Now they're separate from the other members in that they are not typically jailed because they're not flight risks,
Hmm.
right? They are both devils, but also kind of like the glue, not the glue, but like the heart of the devils. Like they form the devils. You know, the Baron, he's a vampire, is extremely dangerous. Balthazar is a necromancer who would definitely escape. Sunny would probably, maybe, we don't know, but maybe try to escape. And so that's kind of the thing, is like they're flight risks.
Yep. And so after we meet Baron Rickard, Brother Diaz happens to notice a fourth cell that is mysteriously empty and inquires about that. And so they're just like, oh, yeah, that's... I don't remember if they name her, they name drop her there, or...
No, they don't. They drain up her a little bit later, but it's not entirely empty. It is blood streaked.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then Brother Diaz asks, and they're just like, they basically just shrug it off. They're just like, the person who's in there is currently in detention because their behavior was unacceptable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they were behaving well. It was just like a gore street court. Like he just wasn't. You know, it's just kind of throwing a little bit of a tantrum.
Yeah,
Not a big deal. Nothing to be worried about.
That's funny.
Yeah, which I think for me at that moment it was one of two things was implied by that, which was either that the previous sorcerer was killed by this individual or the previous vicar was killed by this individual.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah.
And so I thought that was kind of neat.
Yeah. So maybe now we jump over to Alex, because the next we see the next step is the convergence of these two parties. So so Alex also has a great opening, right? Just like the worst kind of thief. I'll do anything to just protect my own hide, like working for the wrong people, just survival, right? Survive. I'll do whatever I have to do. I'll lie, I'll cheat, I'll steal, whatever. And so she is basically cornered by these thugs that work for, I can't remember the name, but some like mafia guy who's just like, hey, you owe us, and we've given you time, and you keep delaying, and we're not gonna let that happen anymore. So sorry, but we're gonna have to kill you. And so that's
worth noting too that at least she says that it's not her debt actually, which is kind of interesting. But it's essentially GG's for Alex, and that's the end of the story. So there you go.
Yeah, it was a great story. Yeah, she dies, and
and we move on.
Yeah.
No, but so the part one title is called Worst Princess Ever because what we find out is that Alex is the worst princess ever. She's this thief that kind of prowls around the Vatican, and all of a sudden she's about to get killed when this nobleman shows up and just says, hey, look, you need to unhand her. Like, why her? Well, she has this scar that defines her as being actually the lost heiress to the throne of Troy. Right? There was a daughter that was lost, actually this man's niece, right? That was lost, and he's been searching for her, and he's now found her. And there's this great scene where, you know, they're like, well, what will you pay for her? And so he throws out this bag of gold, and they're like, so that's what you think the heiress to the lost heiress to the throne of Troy is worth? And he's like, no, that's what I think you're worth. And then his like servant like pulls out this like great sword. He's just like, yeah, come at us.
Yep, which is awesome. Yeah. So that's where we get to meet Duke Michael and Eusebius, his servant.
His treasured
His
servant.
treasured servant, who, yeah,
Yeah.
notably he tells Alex at some point. He's like,
Mhm.
"Oh, don't worry about me. I'm expendable. But a good
Yes.
servant like Eusebius, they are a treasure. Protect him at all costs." Basically, like
Hmm.
he is the greatest servant. He's the goat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who notably, I think I could be wrong. It's been a while since we did part one, but he doesn't speak
Mm-mm.
ever.
Mm-mm.
We never get a word out of him. He's just kind of
Nope.
like,
Not once.
yeah, the silent minion next to Duke Michael. But yeah, so he rescues
Yeah.
Alex and then basically tells her. I think he holds her up in some place they're staying while they're waiting for what's next, which Alex doesn't know. Serves her a nice dinner and stuff like that, and basically tells her fate, which is
Mhm.
that she is the heiress. And then I really like this part about Alex because, or with Alex, because she is like, oh, I'm royalty, and she's having a hard time believing that, but she's also like, but I'm not gonna deny it. Like,
Yeah.
if I'm gonna get to be a princess out of this, okay, I'll do whatever. And then at the same time, she's like sitting at this nice dinner table, and she thinks about like stealing from there. And it's just like, bro, you're about to be a princess, but she just doesn't believe it enough to where she's just like, that's just who she is. She
Yep.
thinks about still stealing silverware just to sell.
Yep.
Um,
Well, and I think it's like notable, especially for this part of the book, right? Is that there are essentially like two people, because I'm not going to count Eusebius, but there's essentially like two people that are cooperating with her being a princess, and then two more will get added on. And the other two, I think they're, which is Cardinal Bach and Cardinal Zizka, which I think their motivations for this totally make sense, at least as it appears so far. But like the two that are most interesting is like, why is Alex on board for all of this, and why is Duke Michael on board for all this? Now he gives a reason. He says, "Hey, look, I have two sisters." Which he, and I think he may have mentioned that he has heirs, but they're dead, or
I
I can't
think we
remember.
actually find this out during
Um,
um the Celestial Choir. I
yeah.
think at this point Alex doesn't even know, right? I think she also
Uh,
kind of finds out with the seers.
well, she finds out more about her destiny, but she doesn't. Like, he tells her like, "You're my niece."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
but like, I don't know if he has heirs. But
Yeah,
he basically says like, "Hey, look, um, your mom was my older sister. She was the heir to the throne. She got murdered by our other sister, who's well, just a jerk, and she's dead. And she's got three sons who are now all competing for the throne, and they're also just like a bunch of jerks, and
four
nobody wants to
sons.
see them. Four sons.
Four sons.
Yeah, four sons. And nobody wants to see them on the throne. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a Hail Mary shot. We're going to basically put your name out there as a challenger because we don't want them to be on the throne because it will
Yep.
be total bloodshed.
And in this world that we're in, that she is the actual right. It goes to the
Yep.
daughter, so
Yep.
she is the
Yes.
actual rightful heir, and yeah. So and so that's why he's so glad he found her. And he even has like the there's like a necklace that's something that's broken into two. They fit
Yeah.
together. He's
Yeah.
got
A
one.
symbol on.
Yeah, exactly. And she's had the other one. She's even from the from the get go. She's had this necklace, and so that's how he kind of proves
Yep.
to her like, hey, look at this. I got the other one. Let's see if it matches. And she holds it up and like it does match. And so she's like, oh, maybe. I still don't think she's fully on board believing.
No. And I
But
think that's the important thing is like for her, I don't like first of all, I think we're supposed to believe that this is real. At least that's what it seemed like
yeah,
to me, like as a reader. I don't think we're supposed to believe that she's on board. I think it's very much like, hey, look, if there's a major crime boss in the Vatican or this area who's like going to kill you,
yeah,
and then a person who comes along and says, "Oh, by the way, not only am I going to save your life and get you out of town, I'm also going to pamper you along the way."
yeah,
I think you just take that for
yeah.
as long as it works,
Oh
right? And
no.
oh no,
I
maybe if you
guess.
pull my arm, I'll
Yeah,
do it.
yeah.
So I think that's really how I took it. It was just like, well,
Yeah.
this is exactly perfect for her because it is one of those situations where it's just like I will I will scrape and claw for every last way out, and I finally found a last way out. Right, this is my last way out, so we're just gonna take it.
Yep. Yeah. And so next day, or I guess not next day, but next step for them, I guess we don't really know
Yep.
day wise. They also go to is it called what do they call it? Is it just the Holy City? that what they
Yeah, it's the
called
Holy
it?
City.
They go to the Holy City, and they also meet with some cardinals while they're there and find out what they're doing. One notably is Cardinal Bach, in which the church, we are finding out, has a mission. It's kind of like their prerogative as well to get Alex on the throne. And so they're saying, well, before we do this, we gotta let's make sure you're the right person. Like, sure, you've got this necklace, but like that doesn't really prove that it's you. So they
Yep.
take her to this room where they perform a ritual with these seers, which are hilarious. I think,
Yep.
like starved. They come out. They're
Yeah.
like skin and bone. They're starved. I can't remember if they're blind or not.
I mean, basically, they're essentially like oracles from
Yeah,
Greece.
they're oracles. Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
there's like put
Yeah.
Alex in the middle of this circle, and they basically have these oracles read or tell her prophecy, along with also just the prophecy of the elves, which they cannot get off of. And I love this about his writing is that so far everyone we've met in the church is so just nonchalant about everything they do. And so like this is like a locked, very secret room. And so
Yep.
they meet with Alex and Duke Michael, and she's like, Bach is like, all right, come with me. And they get to the door, and she's like, all right, the Father, Son, all right, and we go in. And like that's her like blessing the room. It's just like so like, yeah, whatever. I've blessed it 1,000 times. I'll bless it again. I'm supposed to bless it, so it's blessed. Which is hilarious. She's so nonchalant, she can't even remember Alex's name.
Yeah. Just keep asking for it.
Yeah. I wonder if maybe we're being Bach's. Maybe maybe we also can't remember her name apparently. But yeah, so the oracles are hilarious with just like the elves are hungry, and she's like, yes, we know they're hungry. We know. What about Alex? So do you want to tell us what we learn about Alex?
Yeah. Well, I was just gonna say, just the contrast is so great because they get to that like gate, and it's just like it's locked from this side, right? So like they're locking something in.
Yeah.
Or no, sorry, it's locked the other way. I think is what it was. It's like if it shuts, it's supposed to like keep, basically like nothing. No, I'm saying it right. Nothing can escape.
Nothing can get out.
Yeah. Nothing can get out. So it's like they're gonna go into a room that's gonna be like locked behind them, and then like the guards bring the oracles out, and the guards are like sweating.
Yeah.
They're like shaking in their boots. And she's like in the circle, and she's like, "Is this safe?" And they're like, "Yeah, just don't leave the circle." She's like, "What happens if I leave the circle?" They're like, just
don't. Yeah, just don't.
And so then these oracles, they start prophesying, and I think we're supposed to take this, sort of as being true.
Mm-hmm.
And then like they literally start like burning up. Like Alex like touches one, and just like it like almost like gives her like burns on her skin. These things are just like lighting on fire, and yeah, they're going on and on about the elves. And Bach's just like, "Don't worry, they say that every time." And then we basically get this proclamation that Alex is the pyrogenesis or
pyrogenesis. I think is right.
Yeah. You had it.
Did I right? What I write?
It's like pyrogenitus. I think.
Yes, I think whatever I wrote. Yes, yeah. This is how it is in the book. Pyrogenitus.
Yeah. Pyrogenitus. Yeah, I put like I was like pyrogenitus, pyrogenesis.
Yeah. Well, apparently it's a theme to not know Alex's name, so we're super on brand. Even when it's written down.
I also put in one of my jokes. I was like, at the end of all of the different iterations of it, I put supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
Yeah.
So because I am a dork. Yeah. And so we find out that she's the pyrogenitus, which is really important for this world.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, and I do love kind of the mixture of themes here. She's so, and this will be, I think, kind of good to also talk a little bit about the politics and the church and the split. But at least for right now, what you basically need to know is that in this alternative history, the church has still had its Eastern and Western schism.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we still have like the Crusades, although it's the Crusades against the elves, and those Crusades have to go through the East. So we have similar problems in the sense that the East isn't all too happy about having all these soldiers from the West like marching through their lands, right? And so there's this split, and the East is kind of, there's animosity. So it's like the same faith, but they do it slightly differently.
Yeah.
And there's this animosity.
Which I'd love to. I wrote. I think I can't remember if I actually wrote down what the differences are, but I do remember them. Yeah. So one of them, the West is the sign of the circle.
Yep.
instead of like the sign of the cross, right? And then
Yep.
the east is the sign of the wheel,
Hmm.
which is already funny because it's like, what's the difference? Like, and so I think maybe we were thinking like one's clockwise, one's
Yeah.
counterclockwise or something like something. You're right. There's notable like it's a classic thing with religion where it's like our way is the
Yeah.
right way. But that's
Yeah.
one which is subtle. Another one is that they debate on which day Easter is. But there is
Hmm.
one notable one, which is that men take the positions of important. I don't know what it's called, but basically the men are the cardinals and stuff in the East, where
Yep.
is women in the West. So that's what I found to be the most notable one
Mhm.
in the
Yeah,
difference.
and so it's kind of crazy because well, so I'll hold this for just a second because I
Hmm.
definitely want to talk about it more. But basically, what they find out is that she is the pyrogenetist, and so what this basically means is that she was essentially born under the fire of essentially what's the equivalent of like the Lighthouse of Alexandria in a way. But basically, there's this very significant building in Troy, which is really cool. It's not going to be based, in sort of the traditional House of the East, like what we have today. It's actually based in Troy,
Hmm.
right? Which would normally be like a fallen city, but not here. And so it's actually going to be Troy that's the capital of the East. And so there's this special building there. And essentially in Troy, or at least in the old tradition, that the dynasty is passed from mother to daughter.
Hmm.
And so it's always going to be like the first daughter who's like heir to the throne is going to be basically born under the fire of this lighthouse. And so they'd be called pyrogenitus. And so that sort of represents that they are like the true born heir.
Hmm.
And so Alex's mom was born under the fire of the lighthouse, but so was Alex.
Yep.
And that's what this proclamation basically means. And so it's essentially, as far as like the church is concerned, and as far as the people there are concerned, as far as the world will be concerned, this is essentially like the most definitive evidence that you could muster for Alex being the lost heiress to Troy,
Yeah.
which is pretty cool.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
the reason why it's kind of been just stagnant until right now is because you mentioned earlier Eudoxia, so there's like the mommy, the
Yep.
queen mommy, Empress Theodosia,
Mhm.
and she had three children: Michael, Duke Michael,
Mhm. Yep.
Irene, who's Alex's mother, and
Mhm.
Eudoxia. And like you said, Irene was the pyrogenetess, and so
Mhm.
she was the rightful heir. But Eudoxia killed Irene, and therefore she becomes the next heir over Duke Michael. And so
Yep.
that's why she's just been sitting the throne this whole time, and that's why it's just kind of been stagnant. But we find out she has now died, and
Mhm.
that's why Duke Michael is set out to find her because the throne's empty.
Mhm.
Before there was nothing he could do, right? There was nothing he could do to get her off of there. But now that Eudoxia is dead, he's got the mission to get Alex there, and the oracles confirm all this. It's like, yeah, we get everything we need to like lock it in, and I don't. Did you think that this was like a moment for Alex to where she was like, oh, maybe I am? Because I didn't. It seemed
Yeah.
like
No.
she's still like, nah,
Yeah.
like this is weird. Like,
Yeah.
uh,
I think it's like it's definitely kind of chipping away in the sense it's like it's just it's to such extreme lengths because I even asked myself I was just like is this one of those things that like Duke Michael could have just paid for,
mm-hmm,
right? I mean regardless of her actual origins, like could he have paid for it? And I was just like, but this is just to such an extreme that it almost just like why even if that's the case why even go through the whole choir, why not just pay the cardinal to just stamp the damn the
yeah,
damn
yeah,
letter, like he doesn't they don't need to go through this pomp and circumstance, they don't need to have these oracles like go through all of this. So I think it's just like to such an extreme that we certainly like I think it makes sense for us to believe it as readers, but I think for Alex it's still very much like it's almost like too much, right?
it's a lot
But
of
it's like
pageantry for
yeah,
someone that's not
but it
involved in
is
the
like
church.
but it's like chipping away,
Mm-hmm.
right,
Yeah.
at her beliefs and expectations. So
I think she's setting up this wall of like she doesn't want to be disappointed when it turns out to
yeah,
not be true.
yeah,
But I don't think there's any part of her that would be too disappointed as of right now for what she
yep,
knows. If it did turn out to be true, but
yeah,
I really liked that scene. I thought it was a really funny scene, but also, yeah, we kind of get like, okay, we know now what the kind of quest is going to be, and like we're locked in. And now we get this convergence of these two groups that we've met. And it's kind of conjoined by the Pope.
Yep.
Our surprise Pope.
Yeah. So this will be a great moment to kind of talk about some of like kind of the fun stuff with this whole universe. So then the two groups join up when Cardinal Bach, the Pope, and Alex, they all go to meet the devils. And we find out that the Pope is actually a 10-year-old girl.
Yep.
Which is hilarious. And she's also like again, the informality of everything, just like totally whimsical and just like doesn't care at all for formality.
Yep.
And like at one point she's talking to Balthazar and he's just like, oh yeah, I made he's like, I'm a necromancer. She's like, you're the one who made the dead dance. He's like, I am. And she's like, I'd love to see that sometime. All the cardinals are just like, face palming. Like, and so it's just, again, the whole like sort of last day school nature of the whole thing is just so funny. But it's been really fun kind of reading through all of this because my wife and I are practicing Catholics, and so I could certainly see there being some controversy, let's say, with the book. Maybe that's not the right word for it, but I could see some conflict. And I think, I can't remember, Matt, if you had mentioned this, but were you raised in a home where you couldn't read Harry Potter?
I wasn't. I was raised Catholic. Yeah. I'm not Catholic anymore, but I wasn't raised in a house where like I call us diet Catholics because it's like we went to church on Sundays, but like we not to that extreme. Like I can still read Harry Potter.
But I've definitely known people where that was the case. My wife has known people that was the case, and like I remember growing up too when like the Da Vinci Code came out, and I remember like at church. Going to church, and there was like in the youth room there was like a poster that was like, don't read this book, don't watch this movie, just like so that's like a thing that does happen. And so I could definitely see like there's some parents out there that are going to be like seeing this and like no.
Yeah.
But it's kind of funny because in many ways Joe Abercrombie is like far more consistent in his presentation and like far more fair in his presentation than you might otherwise think, because he's changing a lot of things, but I don't think you're meant to take it as like a criticism or a commentary.
Yeah, he's not bashing.
He's not. He's being very consistent. So, for example, like we make the sign of the cross, right? They make the sign of the wheel, but we find out later that the Savior was crucified on a wheel, not on a cross, right? So there's consistency there. We find out that the Savior was a woman. Which is why the clergy are also women, right? And so that's literally the same reason why in the Catholic Church, why all the clergy are men. Also, too, like note that the church today, there's actually lots of different religious orders for both men and women. So like it also makes sense that we'd have Brother Diaz, who's technically not a priest, he's a monk, right? And so he's in a religious order, so like it makes sense that would exist. So it's just fun. There's a lot of like consistency in the presentation. It's an alternate. But there is like this consistent presentation. But then to get to this 10-year-old Pope, then you might get to a point where you're like, hold on a second. I've got a monk who's dropping GDs, who's checking out all the prostitutes on the street. I got these like lackadaisical cardinals. I have this one cardinal who's like, it kind of seems like they're up to no good. Shishka, who's like kind of running the show. I got this like 10-year-old Pope. It's like, what in the world's going on? Well, that's the thing is like, and I was telling you about this. I don't think you knew this, but like the church had a period, we call it the pornocratic period of the church, where just like things were just wild, man. Like popes were like dying in the middle of like having affairs with people. There's like a guy who was like baptized, given first communion, confirmed, ordained, and made a pope in the same day, and was like literally assassinated by the weekend. I mean, it's just like it was a crazy time.
Yeah.
And it's the kind of time of the church where you get like famous quotes that come later, like when Napoleon said to one of the priests, he's like, I will rip your church down. And he's like, he just laughed. He's like, if human negligence couldn't have done it by now, I don't think you're going to do it, And it's just like, that's what this period is. It's just like, who knows what the hell is going on? And for me, I'm just reading this. I'm like, this is so good. Like, this is just like I don't want to say the pornocratic period at its best, because that just doesn't, that sounds like a bull in a china shop kind of thing. But it's such a fun like presentation for things that just makes it like a very like real feeling story and just a different kind of universe.
Yeah.
And the Pope is just the icing on the cake, especially with interaction with Balthazar. It's
Yeah.
just so good.
Did you have any did you guess at all that this would be the case with the Pope? Because it was a
No,
complete surprise for me.
no, I'm not expecting to be a woman because the
Yeah, yeah.
Cardinals are all women,
Yep.
but I did not expect to be like a 10-year-old
10-year-old,
child.
yeah.
But for me, the icing on the cake isn't just that she's 10. It's just that like she's also the most powerful sorcerer that like the world has ever seen. Is like
Yep.
that's what everybody's saying.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also presented in such a way where like you've got Balthazar who's like, well, that can't be true. But also, of course, he would say that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But there's part of me that's just like, but maybe it is true. Like maybe she just really is. Like we have this whole presentation and it's just like then we get the anime twist of like, oh yeah, by the way, like
Yeah.
here is like the savior of the world come
Mhm.
again. This 10-year-old child is more powerful than you'll ever become.
Yeah.
And so if, then we get all of this and it's just like the interaction with Balthazar is just so great. So she's got the only reason why she's there is that she has to put a papal binding on the devils, and this is essentially like if you've ever seen Suicide Squad or this is the detonation collar, right? This is like the you're essentially
contract.
criminals. You can't we have to do something so you can't get away. And so here's basically this papal binding. It's essentially a blessing, if you want to call it that. That's going to be given to them by the Pope, and essentially it will allow the Pope to specify a set of rules that they have to follow under some kind of penalty. And so she gets there and Balthazar's like he's super skeptical, but then his mind starts racing, right? He's like, oh, what's she gonna do? She's probably gonna do this or put this together.
Very
And then she just
methodical
like
about it.
yeah, exactly. In his way, right? And then she just like dips her fingers in some paint and then just like draws a line. It's not even straight, it's just crooked lines. She just finger paints his wrist, and he's just like WTF.
Yeah.
Like this is not a spell. This is not magic. This is not incantation. Like you are finger painting my body. Like what are you doing right now?
Yeah, it's so funny.
Yeah. And he just like he can't accept that like just this is entirely antithetical to what he does, right? There's no pageantry in this at all. It's taken like without any care or consideration, and he's just like this can't be real,
Yeah.
right?
And I love the way she gives them the mission too. She's like, "All right, so, and like right, just because whispering in her ear, like, so they're gonna do that," and she's like, "All right, so you're gonna take Alex to Troy and put her on the throne, and yeah, I guess just don't let anything happen to her along the way, or you'll get really sick or something." Like it's so just like, and Balthazar's like, what? This is it? Like, oh, he's like, oh yeah, oh okay, I'm totally getting out of here. Like, this is a joke. Which is There's just
one of my favorite.
sorry,
Okay,
go
go
ahead. Oh, I was just gonna say, like, I just think it's funny they set it up to be this like binding contract that you are expecting all these rules and regulations, and it's just like, just get her there and don't escape and come back when you're done. Like, I love it.
Yeah, and the Indian interaction is so good because they're like, we get his voice of just like how much he hates this, and then it comes back to the Pope, and she's like, "Oh yeah, and like come back too, that would be good."
Yeah.
And the Cardinal's like, "Oh yeah, great thinking, Pope." And it's just like they're like congratulating her on like remembering to like add the little addendum. And it's just so good. And then of course, then they have to leave because they have to go, and that's when we get Viga's name drops. She's like, "Oh, I want to go see Viga." Which I still think is like a really interesting interaction. And for me is like, that was like the interaction that now I'm like still thinking like, I think she is just like actually really, really strong because she's like, oh, I want to go like see Viga because I want to go ride on her back. And so now at the time, we don't really know what that meant. Although I did have some suspicions, like we got a vampire, so it kind of made sense. Like we would get a werewolf, and that's like one of our big reveals at the end of part 1 is that we have the last member of the Devils, Viga, is a werewolf,
which Joe doesn't try and hide, right? It's like literally on the, it's like inside the front. I kept waiting, and be like, well, when's this character gonna show up? Who's this? Like, and then you're like, okay, I think this is the wolf, the werewolf.
But it's like heavily implied that the wolf is actually the person whose back she was riding. It's like heavily implied that she's just playing with the wolf.
Yeah,
which is just like That's actually crazy. If that's
Especially
the
once we
case.
see, yeah, when we get to see Viga and what she does.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really do think it just like solidifies that
Mm.
the Pope is actually. I mean, the fact that we see what the binding does too.
Yep.
I think, yeah, she just is that powerful. But she's also a
Mhm.
10-year-old, right?
Yeah.
I think he writes it perfectly. Like,
Yeah.
she is all powerful, but she's still a kid, you know.
Mhm.
Um, and the way the adults surrounding her treat her is just hilarious. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's great. But yeah, we're at an hour, so we might want to we'll get
Yep.
to this final fight because really that's our big setup, and then they leave,
Yep.
then they're off,
Yep.
and there's not a ton that happens on the road. It's just we kind of get a little bit more of some conversations
Yep.
between mostly Rickard and Balthazar
Yep.
about the like him trying to escape and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
Rickard's like, "All right, bud, yeah, go ahead,
Yeah.
try it. I'll be right here."
Yep. And so I think the kind of the few notable things. Oh, sorry, just for the journey is we do see that Rickard is essentially the only one who knows that Balthazar is going to try to break the binding.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Balthazar cannot accept that this binding is legitimate, but we find out that it is because every time he tries to think about breaking it, he starts vomiting or having diarrhea.
mm-hmm.
Really consistent, by the way, with the theme of this channel.
Yeah, yeah,
And so, but it's just yeah, it's just kind of funny. And I was just like thinking to myself when I read this, you know, the classic like computer science brain divided. Like I could very much relate to Balthazar and just like there's a problem to solve, I must solve it.
yeah, yeah.
And so for me, I just know that like the most painful thing would just be like being given a problem where you have no way to start. It's just like he has to look at a line. Like there's nothing to make sense of. There's
Yeah, there's no
no,
code, there's no
there's no
drawing.
code, there's
Yeah.
nothing to unravel. There's nothing here for him to
Mm-hmm.
look at. But his mind, like that's just like that's abject terror, right?
Yeah.
Like that he has to somehow figure out this problem, even though there's nothing to go on.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that little internal monologue that we get. And
There was
so,
one
but
more
there,
notable thing before
yeah,
they left. Someone, sorry, two notable things before they
mm,
left that gathering down in the dungeon. Someone working for the church dropped a piece of paper that
yep,
Balthazar snatched
yep.
and he's going to use that to write whatever. I don't. Does he call them spells? What does he call them when they're written out?
Incantations and rituals are
Okay,
usually the
yeah.
two things we use.
So he's got something to work towards his goal. And then the other
Mhm.
notable thing is that Duke Michael has, and the Pope knows this, and the church knows this as well. There is someone in Troy, basically undercover, that worked for Alex's mom,
Yep.
and so they have sent forward basically a document saying, or multiple documents, I think, that they're going to then put up to try and get the people of Troy on board,
Yep. Yep.
with like her picture, with
Yep.
Alex's picture on it, and so that's going to secretly make it there before them, so that when they arrive, the people will already recognize her and be like, "Oh yeah, it's her." Like,
Yep.
so
Yeah,
that's
but it's not supposed to be publicly known
not yet. Yeah, yeah.
until they get there,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the key kicker.
Yeah.
Um,
And,
and then
sorry, there was one more thing,
yeah,
real quick. We did also learn that Baron Rickard, the geriatric vampire, is not a typical vampire that is afraid of sunlight. He loves
yeah,
sunbathing, so he
yeah.
can break the rules a little bit about of vampirism, I guess, as we know it. But I found that interesting. He's
Mhm.
definitely the most like, just, you can tell he's almost like a veteran. Like
Yeah,
he's been through it, and he's like, dude, we're not getting out of this. Like,
yeah,
I'm just gonna do my job and chill. And like, look, we're outside. Like, it's nice. Like, at least we're
yeah.
outside. Enjoy it.
And I think that's like really his redeemable quality. You know, and it's like he's not just like your typical like bloodthirsty, kind of
Mm-mm.
vengeful vampire. That's sort of gone away. He's like your really wise grandpa,
Yeah.
but he's a vampire.
Yeah.
And so the last thing I was going to mention is that we do get a kind of a hint that Baptiste is normal-ish.
Mm.
But her whole thing is that she's a jack of all trades. She is like the jack of all trades.
Yeah.
That's her
I
thing.
feel like every time they bring up some trade, she's like, "Oh yeah, I've done that," and then
Yeah,
she does
yeah,
like a little 2 sentence of like, "Oh yeah, it was 10 years ago, and I was on a ship, and yeah,
yeah,
the cook died, and they needed somebody, so I was a cook on a ship for 2 years."
yeah,
It's just like, you've literally done everything. Everything they talk about,
yeah.
she's like, "Yeah, I've done that."
Yeah. And so that's kind of like her whole edition. And so, yeah, and so we are on the road, and we find out that actually this secret bull is not so secret. They get ambushed. They have to take refuge in a roadside inn, as they then get sieged by this army led by Marcion, who is one of the sons of Eudoxia.
Mm-hmm.
And he is fully intent on killing the devils. Now, I think it's worth noting that it's not clear that he's intent on killing Alex. He kind of like says like, "Oh, I'm here to like wipe you all out," but like it could also be implied that he's actually there to capture Alex.
Sure.
I don't know from my reading that it was totally clear that he's like, "I'm gonna leave Alex like dead and dying here."
Mm-hmm.
It's very clear that Alex is the reason why he's there, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if it's implied that he's there to assassinate her. So I think that's like worth noting as well. But yeah, we get this kind of awesome scene in the inn. Now, there's a few things I could say about the inn scene, but I didn't know if there's anything that you wanted to comment on the scene.
I mean, there's a lot that happens, right?
Yeah.
This is the big set piece of part one, the big conclusion. We did going back a little bit when we've learned about the history about why Eudoxia is dead. We find out that she's been experimenting with animal hybrid, like turning basically animals and humans and making them hybrids, and that maybe she died because an experiment went wrong. We don't really know. That's like a theory. But yeah, when they get ambushed here, it is with an army of these like horrifying, like disgusting human animal hybrids and all kinds. There's like
Yep.
a bunny, there's a
Yeah. There's definitely a minotaur, I think, in there.
there's a
mixed in
yeah,
there
like a
with her.
minotaur, there's like a big like a goat almost, I think.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
quite a few, but before they even show up, right? Our party even splits a little bit here. So like um Duke Michael, Alex, and Eusebius,
Mm.
and Balthazar, and Balthazar
Yep.
go into the
Good.
inn, go into the actual inn, where the rest are
Yep.
kind of outside in like the
Yep.
courtyard,
Yep.
and they are interrupted by a sorceress.
Yep. And that's kind of one of our big gimmicks that we'll kind
Mhm.
of see consistently is that Eudoxia had a coven, is like the term they're using for it. But basically, she practiced. She was actually a very very um, powerful sorcerer. She could throw lightning or something like catch lightning or something like that, which Balthazar does not believe is true
Yeah.
at all. But she's apparently pretty powerful, and she had disciples that she had taught how to do the same thing. And so here we are encountering a sorceress who uses fire magic, and so this is going to be a gimmick that Balthazar is going to sort of always be challenged by these particular sorcerers.
Yeah.
And so he has to kind of go toe to toe. And so there's always going to be like some kind of clever way. And so in this case, having a slaughter at an inn is sort of the, let's say, fertile ground for a necromancer.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's sort of his like clever way of defeating this particular sorceress is like by making use of all of these bodies around him
Yep.
to fight against her, because it's quite hard as a sorceress to kill the already dead, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a pretty cool gimmick.
The sorceress's
Sorceress,
entrance. Well, how do you say something of hers? Her possessive sorceresses.
yeah. Sorceresses.
Yeah, sorceresses.
Possibly.
Alexis. No,
Yeah.
the sorceress when she makes her entrance, it's just good people in the inn at this point, and Duke Michael is like, Eusebius, check the back door. And so Duke Michael and Eusebius are at this back door, and they kind of peek out, and then the door blows up. It
Yep.
explodes. Duke Michael flies into a corner. We don't even see what happens to Eusebius. Then the sorceress comes in. Balthasar defeats her. And I love how he always does the thing where he kind of grovels, like, "Oh wow, you're so powerful! Wow, you
Yeah.
really can do that!" And inside, he's like, "And how am I gonna get out of this? How am I gonna get out of this?" Like,
Yeah.
I love it. But yeah, I think it's really notable what happens to Duke Michael and
Yeah.
Eusebius, and we'll talk about that in a second. But let's talk about what's going on outside, which is we also forgot to say they've just been carrying this very sealed wagon that is completely closed in with this huge gated locked door. Now we don't know what's inside of it, even though like we kind of do, but
Yeah.
that's still locked when this battle is going on. And Marcion comes in and the fight starts and people die, and
Yeah, he basically like Yakov. He like wrecks Yakov. Yakov tries to open up the wagon, can't. Alex tries, I think, at one point open up the wagon and can't. And then it looks like all. I mean, we basically see Alex kind of like in true form, so to speak. She
Oh yeah,
is
she is
facing
about to
kind of
die. I forgot. So I think
well,
Marcy just.
well, well. So that's what I'm saying. Like we think, right?
Yeah, I
But
guess
like
technically he's.
he never like dealt the killing blow, right? And
Mm-hmm.
he's kind of taking his time on it too. But all we really know is that she's groveling,
Mm-hmm. Oh
right?
my
She's just
gosh.
groveling for
I
life,
don't
and
want
it's
to
like
die,
it's
please.
painful. But I
Yeah.
think that's also like for us. I mean, it's meant to like really expose Bear here. That's like she's not at a point yet where like that level of nobility is coming out of her, right?
Mm-mm.
But then this all comes to a head, and then we see Sunny at Sunny's best. Sunny just poofs out of the air because she can turn invisible, and then she just has the key, and she just unlocks the wagon, and then Vega bursts forth,
Yeah.
looking for the good meat.
Looking for that good
Um,
meat.
good meat, and so the werewolf just gets on the scene and just starts wailing on
Yeah.
everybody, left, right, and center,
She
just
literally kills
murdering,
everybody.
kills every last person there except for the members of the Devils, who are basically all kind of not in a position because they're all sort of beaten down, so they're not really a priority. And then
And dead in
finally,
the case of Jacob. He's
yeah,
dead.
technically, yeah, right. And then, but then it sort of ends finally after she kind of pours to everybody. I think it's notable
Including
too that
Marcian.
like
She
yeah,
literally
include
like he's got this big helmet on
Thompson,
and
yeah,
she just like gets the helmet in her mouth and just like bah and then just
yeah,
pops it and like
yeah,
he gone.
he gone. And I thought it was just funny that too that like that everybody she kills is the bad meat. She's like all of them bad meat. I don't like this taste, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but yeah, and so finally, like it looks like it's gonna go real bad after she pops Marcin because then it's like who she got left.
Yep.
And so then Jakob kind of rises up and he's just like, Viga, this behavior is unacceptable. And the wolf starts to calm down and sort of recede, which is kind of a cool scene.
Yeah, because
It also,
that's also the moment where we're like, oh, wait a minute, Jacob was definitely dead. Like he was
yeah,
dead,
oh
and
yeah, they,
here he
yeah,
is.
not left to the imagination. It was very clear that he was dead,
Yeah,
but here he is
here he
because
is.
he can't die.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's a fun reveal. I thought he
Yeah.
was dead. I don't know about you, but I thought he was just there to get us here, and then Brother Diaz was now gonna have to step up and fill
Yep.
this role. So I definitely was on board with like, oh yeah, all right. I liked Jacob. He was fine, but he's dead now. But
Yep.
nope, he ain't dead.
Not quite.
And
And so, yeah, and that kind of basically earmarks the end of the first part. We get to meet Viga, and I think kind of what's most notable is really just the last thing is the interaction between Duke Michael and Alex.
yeah,
And so, because now we're sort of at a point where it's like, what are you going to do as Alex? Because you can't go back to the Holy City because people there want you dead. Now you're sort of with these group of people that are all extremely dangerous. One of them is a werewolf who just like murdered all these people, right? Murdered, right? But like, I mean, just like brutally killed all these people, and they're like charged with taking you to the Holy City, and you got all these people out there who are trying to kill you. That and you're not going to survive a minute without these people around you. So it's like, what do you do, right?
yep,
And so you had some really interesting comments on Alex's interaction with the Duke at the end.
yeah. So a couple notable things happen, right? Vega turns back to human, and we get to see her for the first time. She's all like tatted up, which is interesting.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
of course, Brother
there, and-
Diaz is like, "Oh my gosh, like put some clothes on, like please." Yeah, yeah, exactly, which is hilarious. But Rickard comes out of the inn looking a lot younger, a lot more spry, which is interesting. But yeah, I found the most interesting part was that Duke Michael was like, "Hey, I'm going back to the Holy City," because he's injured. He is injured, and he's like, "I'm not going to be able to make this trip. I'm going to go back to the city." And some of the just like generic guards, I can't remember what they call them, but just like the generic guards are going to escort him there. And I just found myself thinking, so originally when we were doing this, we were just going to read part 1 and then discuss part 1. So the things I took out of part 1 were, okay, so when Alex first comes out of the inn before Marcian's dead, she's inner monologuing and saying like, "Oh my gosh, Jakob's dead. Duke Michael is dead." And I just remember being like, "Wait, Duke Michael's dead? Like I know he got like the door exploded, but like, I didn't think he was dead." And he's not dead. He was just injured. But we never find out what happens to Eusebius, which is really interesting because one, he is not with Duke Michael. He's just not going back. And Duke Michael, who notably earlier in the book was like, "Oh, I'm expendable, but this guy, he's the best. Like no, like he's irreplaceable." But then in this moment, he doesn't even mention Eusebius.
Yeah.
He's never mentioned again. Is the most sus thing, because I was all on board with like Duke Michael like being a good guy, and my biggest prediction here because of that is that either Duke Michael is, because we kind of find, sorry, there is another important factor here, is that when Marcion comes, he's like, "Here's the paper." Like it's the paper with Alex on it that was supposed to be a secret until they got there, and he's just got it. So they're theorizing someone on the inside is working for the other side. And this made me think that either Duke Michael or Eusebius or both were, and I don't think Eusebius is dead, but I just found that very notable of like, oh shit, Duke Michael might not be a good guy. So yeah, that's the biggest thing I took out of the end of part one.
Yeah, and so my sort of follow up on that was I really think that Alex is the rightful heir to the throne of Troy, and I think that something happened with Eudoxia, but I think that whatever happened with Eudoxia, she needs the rightful heir of Troy. She needs a Pyrogenetus, and so
like
I
she's
think
not.
that,
You don't think she's actually dead?
I don't think she's actually dead, or I think there's at very least like a way to bring her back. Like maybe her experiments were successful, but I think that she needs like the rightful heir of Troy to finish her experiment. And I think that Duke Michael has been on it from the beginning, and I think that he came to the Holy City to find the lost heir, and that's why he had to go through the pomp and circumstance. It's because he needed to confirm that she was the rightful heir, and that was the way to do it. And so now that he has that confirmation. Because like he would have known that like he would have had high confidence that like she was the daughter, but like he needed to know that she was Pyrogenitus, and so now that he knows that, that's why all this is happening.
Yeah.
So that was my follow up. Was like I think it's not about Alex, it's about her birthright.
Yeah.
Yep. And that he needs that, and that's why if this whole thing seems like a crazy Hail Mary and really weird, I think that's why. It's because it's not real. It's to get her out of the Holy City.
Yeah.
Yep.
So how do we want to do this? First time we're wrapping two parts up in one. Do we want to talk about other predictions we had down for part one, and then just talk generally about like quickly what we liked, what we didn't like about part one, and then we'll get into part two?
Yeah, I think we just jump into what we liked, what we didn't like. I didn't really have much else that I wanted to put in terms of like things I expected to see in.
The only one I did was the vial of blood of Saint Beatrix that Brother Diaz wears.
Yep.
I do think there's going to be something extremely important with that, be it Rickard has to drink it and becomes like Super Saiyan or something like that. But I don't know. I just think it is going to become very, very important.
Yep.
But yeah, let's get into likes and dislikes. So this was your first like chunk of a Joe Abercrombie, of a Joseph Edward Abercrombie.
Joseph Edward Abercrombie. Yeah, you got to use his Christian name.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. What did you think?
So I really enjoyed it. I mentioned to you that because I can see the videos on your channel whenever I go to upload content. So I saw.
You better watch my stuff.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Better.
I get to watch like.
Better watch the spoilers content.
I get to watch what was recommended to you. And so of course I saw that there were other booktubers that were DNFing. And I also did see some sort of non-spoiler reviews of people that were essentially not liking it, and for me, I didn't really see that. Like when I think about the sort of genre this fits into, that's not a breaker for me. Like when I talk about this kind of being in that same genre of fantasy, that's like a shelf stalker. Like that's not for me. Like that's not a break. Then like I don't think it should be. It's just a kind of genre. It's a book that is intended to be fun and entertaining and not require a lot of complex thought. Like it's meant to just be a story that you can listen to, like almost like a campfire story. Like it doesn't need to be super complicated. It doesn't need to have layers and layers and layers. It's okay for the character to just flat out kind of like essentially tell you without telling you. Right? Like Alex is just like, I don't trust this. I don't know if I can trust this. Usually if they tell you it's too good to be true, it's not true. Right? It's like, it's okay. And then like we find out Duke Michael, and this is like, that's fine. Right? Like that's. It's
Yeah.
cool. It doesn't matter. That's a predictable
I don't
twist.
think Joe is trying to. I think Joe is delivering exactly what he has promised here, which is
Yeah.
a comedy, a
Yeah.
romp, a good time. It's not supposed to take itself seriously. It is not
Yeah.
supposed to be. Yeah, I mean, like to me, it's delivering exactly what he said it would. And when I see some of these critiques, I like if you. I do think Joe is a very uh, character driven writer. If you're a character driven reader, I think you'll love Joe. If you're a plot driven reader exclusively, I could totally see why this book doesn't work for you off of this. Like there's not I mean there is a plot, but it's very like a high level plot. It's like we know from the beginning it's like we're going to go from point A to point B probably by the end of the book, and like that's the
Yeah.
plot. It's all about the character work. So if you're not
Yeah.
so into character work, then I could see why this wouldn't work. And if you hate humor in your books, you probably won't like this because it's full of a lot of
Yep.
comedy. But yeah, I agree. I mean, I've seen I think there's just a lot of mixed reviews out there. There's a lot of really really positive and a lot of yeah, I didn't finish it, and yeah, the way that I've watched some of those DNF videos, and a lot of them are like it's just too there's too much humor, too much humor, too much humor, and I just kept thinking like, oh no, is there too much? Like Joe is humorous in his other books too. I think he walks that line perfectly. And then I did know that this one he was like, this is more of a comedy than my other book, so I was expecting it to be more. But the way people talk about it, I was like, oh no, there's gonna be a joke every line, every line, every line, every line. But there's really not. Like there is a lot of humor, but it's like one or two a page. It feels appropriate for a comedy. So I'm enjoying the humor. Not every joke lands for
Yep.
sure, which
Agree.
I you can't expect that to in a
Mhm.
comedy. You go watch any comedy movie, not every joke's gonna land. Like that's just natural. But I do think a lot of it has landed for me.
Same.
Um, so, but yeah, so that's kind of what do you what else do you think? Should we just do thumbs up and thumbs down? I guess we are. We're at an hour and a half.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'll just go and finish up just by saying that I've really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the character work. I find myself wanting to go back and listen more to it to learn more about the characters. I will say that it's not like I need to know about every single character right now. Like I'm frankly like Alex is probably the one I'm like least interested in right now. But for me that's okay because like I'm interested in Brother Diaz. I'm interested to see what happens with Balthazar, and I enjoy having the characters, and I think the interactions feel honest.
Yeah, I
And
think so
so
too.
it's been a really good reel. I mean, it's just been a really good reveal, and I think that the he adds in proper inversions that also make it interesting. While at the same time, just yeah, exactly. It's point A to point B, and that's okay, right?
Yeah,
There's going to be some turns along the way, and like it's just a journey. And the only parts I really glaze over are just the parts when it comes to the big battles, like especially when V got released. I was just like, that's epic.
yeah.
But like pretty much the only part of that I really didn't glaze over was just like when she killed Marcian.
Mm-hmm.
But like, here's the thing: is like I glaze over almost all battle scenes. Like when I was reading Mistborn, I glazed over every single fight in Mistborn. I just
Yeah,
don't. If I'm playing a video game or watching a movie or watching an anime, hell yeah. But like, if I'm reading a book, I don't really care.
yeah,
Like you want to tell me about the cool battle like in Malazan? Great, I love that. I love the tactics. I love the organization. I love the interest on the characters. But if it's just like showy fight, I don't really care. But
yeah.
so I'd glaze over it anyway.
Yeah. I'll talk.
Um,
I'll speak
yeah.
to more of that as well after part two. The way I
Yeah.
was feeling after part one was that, yep, very very positive, great opening, great unique characters. My only complaint, if there was one, was that I just wish we had a little bit more time
Yeah.
with all the characters. But I'm also a realist in the sense of like it's only 90 pages. There's like 8 main characters. There's only so many pages we can get per character, and I was hoping going into part two we would flesh out some of those characters more. So that's where I was sitting, positive, excited to read more. And yeah, do we want to do part two? We're at an hour and a half. How you feel?
So, yeah, it's actually a good question. I didn't know that we'd actually get through 90 minutes with just part one, but I guess there was a lot of like interesting stuff to say in the setup. Part two, so spoilers on part two. So I'm gonna go and preface that now because I'm gonna mention a few things.
Spoilers.
Spoilers. So there's the pilgrimage, there is Venice, and then there's
Side
the boat.
quest in Venice, and then the boat. Yeah,
Yeah.
3 main things. So we could definitely keep it shorter.
Yeah.
Especially the end. I think the whole final battle is like I could wrap that up in a few sentences.
Yep. So I'd definitely be fine with going through part 2, and then that will allow us to start jumping into part 3.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
So because like for me, I think I don't mean to detract from Joe Abercrombie's work, but I think for me, it's just like there's essentially like 3 scenes in part 2 that really are like the defining scenes of this part. The stuff in between, like we get first of all, we get a lot more information on Vega.
It's character.
And we get
work.
a lot. Yep, it's character work. We get a lot more information on Sunny. And frankly, those were the 2 people I was like the most interested in getting more information on.
Yep.
And so that was really cool for that character work. But I think a lot of that character work can be just you can focus on 3 scenes as sort of the defining arcs of these characters.
Yeah.
So after the whole thing with the end, they're very aware of the fact that this papal bull has been leaked. So right off the bat, Jakob is like, we cannot follow the plan. Period. Yep. We have to go do something else. And then again, gimmicks. The Naples gimmick is just every time they talk about where they should go, and they're like, well, we can't go to Naples because Naples. And everyone's like, of course.
Yeah.
They don't explain it at this point, right? It's just taken for granted. And it comes up like 3 times. And everyone's just like, well, of course we can't go to Naples. It's just like, what's happening in Naples? Which, by the way, I think like, I feel like we have to end up in Naples now at some point.
Yeah, or just maybe in a future book or something.
Yeah. We'll have to go to Naples at some point now. You've piqued my curiosity.
Yeah.
But so essentially what they decide is that they need to go to Venice. And the reason why they're going to go to Venice is because they essentially it's like the least worst option, but they don't expect anyone to find them in Venice. But most notably, there's a criminal element in Venice that's going to allow them to get out of Venice without being registered. And so that's really why they want to go, is because they want to be able to get on a ship to Troy without having to put their names down. Because they don't want anybody to know that they're traveling with Alex or to have to raise any suspicions.
Yep.
And so they decided to go to Venice. And of course, Baptiste knows somebody in Venice because of course you would.
Yep.
Of course you would. And so the first kind of major thing that happens is Alex has this great suggestion that actually what they should do in the meantime, like while trying to get to Venice, is just to essentially travel as pilgrims. So to just masquerade as pilgrims. They would fit in that way because, pilgrims who are making a long pilgrimage are generally people who are going to be, potentially unsavory characters, or at least they could work to their advantage, right? Like, oh, if I'm unsavory, that's why I'm here, because I'm trying to make up for it, right?
One part about this I thought was funny, and just so on brand for like, it gave me very big like Monty Python vibes. It was like the rich were actually just paying other people to go on the pilgrimage for them. I just found that hilarious. Like, it's just so on brand. Of like, I want to absolve myself of my sins, but like, ooh, it's a long walk. It's a long walk. Why don't you do it for me? Like, I'm sure it works the same. It's so funny.
Like you carried like these signs or something.
It's very funny.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that one tickled me a lot. I saw when I read that, I was just like, oh my god.
Yeah. It's very funny.
It's just so on brand for the world at this point too, which is just so good. But it is very much like a Monty Python sketch at that point.
Yeah.
And so now we get some really cool character work with Baron Ricard, with Alex, with Brother Diaz, and we do start to see their characters really develop, especially like in their interactions. We also see Alex really take to Sunny, which I thought was really cool. I actually really liked that.
God, man, this part made me love Sunny. I love Sunny. She's so cute. She's just adorable. Like, she's so sweet. I love her.
Yeah, well, it just all comes to a culmination in the ship scene, which is just so good. And so we get to see all this, but then I'll kind of accelerate things so then we can kind of just talk about what happens around it. But then essentially where we get to is we get to the head where they're traveling with this other
she's a bishop.
She's a bishop, that's right. And so, but I believe it's intended that she would be a bishop from the West, but she's definitely not in favor of the Pope. So she's essentially on the verge of being schismatic herself. But she knows about this group. We don't really know how, but she knows that there's a bounty on this group. And she masquerades as if she doesn't know them until the right time. And then we get this revelation that she actually does know who they are and that she is going to take Alex into custody and deliver her to the remaining sons of Eudoxia.
She does specifically name drop Constance as well.
Constance.
She was sent by order of Constance to collect Alex,
Yep. who's one of the other sons. And so then we get this kind of clash, right? She wants to take Alex. They're saying no. And so now it all comes to a head.
Yeah, and the bishop's got some guards there too that are like
Mhm.
willing. They are about to kill each other, basically.
And so essentially what we now see then is we kind of see this whole clash of like, how is it that the devils are going to deal with this whole situation? Alex doesn't know what to do. Brother Diaz doesn't, he actually kind of has a moment where now he's trying to like rile up the crowd against the bishop because he was like enamored. He was like, this is like the symbol, right, of the church right here. Like this is a future saint of the church. Right. And he's like writing letters to his mom that are never going to be sent, but like about how awesome it is that he gets to travel with this bishop. And she's been like inviting him to essentially like share in mass with her. And he's like, you know, and so then he's just like, he's livid. Right. And so he's trying to really drum up the crowd, but of course she's better at it. And then, you know, Balthazar is just like, he has the sorceress's hand and he's just like, he's using it as like a torch, but it's like, it's so rotted at this point, it doesn't really work very well. And I think this also really does drive home a joke that we get later from Sunny, which was just so good, about how she just feels so at peace being in the presence of such experts of their fields. You know, a thief who can't pick the lock of an open door, and a man who can't die, who also can't get out of a boat without splitting himself in half.
Yeah.
You know. And so we just kind of all see that they're like sort of relatively useless, and we also sort of get our first clash or our first sort of indication that perhaps Viga the wolf is like a crutch, right?
Yeah.
And so then all of a sudden, like Viga's like, you better run, or like when the wolf comes out, like you're all dead. And then we get the most amazing scene in the book so far with Baron Ricard, who has been absent for a little bit here, hiding amongst those very signs of the people who paid to have their servants, who has just been like feasting on people left and right after ensorceling them, who just like stands up, his like hair is like waving. He's super young.
Yeah, very charismatic.
So charismatic. And then he just begins to like ensorcel the entire crowd. And what I love it because, you know, we were talking earlier, like maybe you can choose because like Baptiste isn't affected, Balthazar isn't affected, Viga's not affected, which we also learned that he hates Viga's guts, like they hate each other. And Alex is not affected, which makes sense because papal binding. And Yakov's not affected, but Brother Diaz is affected because he keeps going after Brother Diaz. And he just ensorcels all of them, so they're all enamored. They can't break their eyes off of him. And then he just starts monologuing about useless stuff.
Literally about dumplings and like the seasons. It's so funny. And like people are literally like borderline like creaming their pants when he's like, was it autumn? No, it must have been spring because the leaves were already back. And someone's like, oh my God, yes, the leaves were back. And
it had to be spring.
It had to be spring. Yeah, it's so funny. And so, yeah, I thought it was really interesting too because I kept wondering like, oh, well, I mean, Viga is the answer here, right? It's just like, okay, so she's the powerhouse. She can literally kill any amount of people and she won't kill them. So, we're just gonna get Viga out every time there's a problem. But it was nice to see Ricard do his thing. He was the one that saved him this time in a very, very fun way. I agree. It's long. It's a long monologue that's incredibly boring. But that's the point. And the reactions, I'm like, I didn't want it to stop. I was like, keep writing, I want to live in this because it's just so funny.
Yeah, and even like Brother Diaz, like he can't get over it. So even later, he's just like, "You have to tell me more about these dumplings." You know, he's just monologuing about like his time in the past with his wife. We do find out that he married into royalty, which was really interesting. But I think the most interesting thing about that is again these like limitations. Like we're actually learning about limitations, which we hadn't really before. And I think that's honestly the best thing about part 2 of this book is that you learn everyone's limitations because up to this point, the only real thing that we knew is like Brother Diaz is basically useless and Alex is a coward.
Yeah. Yep.
right? But we don't really know the limitations of the other one. So we learn our first limitation in this, which is when Baron Ricard uses this kind of ensorcelment, he loses age.
Mm-hmm.
He rapidly gets older.
Yep.
And so it's almost like his like youth is like a resource.
Yep.
And so he
So
can
cool.
regain it by feasting, but then he spends it by using this power that he's developed
Yeah.
as a vampire. And I thought that was really cool. I love how, you know, they're like they have more than just like the gimmicks of what happens around the character. Like they have a gimmick as well that they have to like play around.
Yep.
And it's to an extreme to where you're like, how can they be like actually good at stuff? But at the same time, it's like, but he's also still a vampire. Like he's still superhuman, right? Like and so yeah, so it's a fun gimmick, but like he's old enough and wise enough to know how to use it to effect.
Yeah. I did want to note as well, one thing I found really cool about that scene was Stephen Pacey's execution of it. Because during this monologue, you literally hear him de-age Ricard. Ricard. How do you say his name?
Yeah.
I keep wanting to go Ricola.
Ricard.
Ricard, yeah. And he starts very young when he's doing this monologue. By the end, he sounds like the old Ricard we met in the beginning, and like props to him. Like that, it's just
So
like
good.
it's so good. Yeah, really, really good. But yeah, I agree. I'm glad that we got that as well, and I didn't even think about it that we did get it for kind of everybody, and that's exactly right, because it does feel when he was doing this monologue, I was just like, oh, okay, well, why aren't we just gonna do the same exact thing with V? I was just like, oh, well, we'll just do this for every situation. He can just talk his way out of it, but then he hit you with the DH, and you're like, oh. But is there a limit? Could he? Is this a way that he could go? Could he talk himself to death?
I don't know. I feel like how he is kind of like his limit.
The old like he could keep that's just like the max that he's gonna be.
Yeah, I think he's just done. Like he just doesn't have any more. And at that point, I think he's just exhausted at that point. Because it's almost like he's drying out, right?
Do you think it's the amount of people? Because like he still ensorcelled Brother Diaz in his current state, in his old state, effectively.
What I think Brother Diaz is, I think part
More
of that is also that Brother Diaz is just more susceptible because he's already like in awe.
Yeah.
But I think it's the amount of people, and I think it's the skepticism.
Sure.
Right? I think it's like how much does he have to push their feelings in a way, right? To if they're really against him, then he has to spend a lot. But like for Brother Diaz, I think it's implied as sort of just child's play. Like he doesn't take anything at all.
No,
yeah.
So that's how they escape.
That's how they escape.
They talk their way out, which is great. I just never went into this thinking like, oh, they'll talk their way out of some situations, but here we are. So then they make it to Venice.
They make it to Venice. They meet up with an old crime boss that
Frigo.
That Frigo and his awesome granddaughter.
His granddaughter, yeah. No nonsense.
No nonsense at all. That's so when Baptist enters.
He calls her a bitch or something, right? He's like, it's this bitch you've been telling me about.
Yeah, exactly. Just to have that come out of the granddaughter was just so good. And he can never be more proud, honestly. Just makes it all the best. But so they meet up with he's a crime boss there in Venice.
He's a bread baker.
Oh well, sorry. He's a bread baker.
He's just a bread baker.
That's all he does.
Yeah.
He's just a bread baker that just so happens to have an armed contingent outside, and also would like them to break into an illusionist house to snatch up an old box for him that he can't otherwise get.
It's a bread recipe.
We get a little side quest, which, by the way, if we didn't get a side quest, this also would this would be breaking the characteristic fantasy. So it is fun that we do get a little side quest, because that's just like, this is the fantasy thing. Oh, you want a boat? You need to go do some useless side quests and go get me a MacGuffin, and then you can have your boat. Like, there is nothing more fantasy than that right there.
Yep.
In my opinion.
And it's good for world building. I do wonder if I don't think we'll ever see Frigo and his granddaughter again in this book, but I could see us going back to Venice and meeting up with this guy again in a future book, because they were like memorable characters that like I'd like to see again.
Very memorable.
So it felt like it was set up for that a little bit.
And I could see a story where Sonny's the one who goes and seeks them out, because we do get this interaction where he's like, "Hey, look, if you ever want work, like, you come here. Like, we'll give you work. You can be with us. You don't have to be with the devils."
And speaking of that, we learned about her limitation as well. during this
Right,
part.
and that's how we learn about her limitation is that she has to hold her breath. She doesn't know why she has to hold her breath, but she has to hold her breath. And I thought that that was really neat. Of like, she clearly has a better relationship with Jakob than any of the rest of them.
Yeah, it's a nice, sweet
And
relationship.
yeah, and then this is one of the cool kind of things is that she actually really relies a lot on Jakob because he's kind of a bigger guy. And so what she'll oftentimes do is she'll sneak around, and then she will duck behind him, take a breath. She'll lose her invisibility, but then she'll hold her breath again, become invisible. And he's accustomed to this, and so she'll get behind him, and be like, "There's armed
Yeah, he'll
guards
kind of like
outside."
feel her brush up against the back of his
Yeah,
leg, and he knows it's Sunny. And yeah, and she'll
yeah,
give him the intel, and then starts
yeah,
to hold her breath again. It's just like
yeah.
that's sweet.
Yeah, that's a very like cool interaction.
Hmm.
And so that's her limitation. She can't be invisible forever. And she'll like wear her boots around her neck rather than on her feet, so she doesn't make as much noise. But that's just her thing. Is she's just very agile. She's very light on her feet, and she's always thinking about where she's going to hold her breath, which also is kind of insane when you think about it. Like, imagine that you spent the vast majority of your day, like spend 8 hours a day, just going from holding your breath to holding your breath to holding your breath. And that's just what she does all the time.
Yeah, I can't remember. I don't think we ever find out like if she can. It seems like she could maybe hold her breath longer than like a human, but I guess we
Yeah,
never know, do we?
I think that's heavily implied.
Yeah.
To be fair, also, like, I mean, there are humans that can hold their breath for quite a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, being at deep water also does help with holding your breath. But like, I mean, humans can hold their breath. I think records are like 10 to 13 minutes.
Yeah, which
Just
is
like
crazy.
insane.
I'm like 30
I mean,
seconds, and I'm like,
yeah,
"Ah!"
but pearl divers off the coast of Japan can hold their breath for an insane amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
And now again, being at deep water does help with that. But again, if you practice at it, you can hold your breath for an extremely long time.
Mm-hmm.
But I get the feeling that she can hold her breath for quite some time.
Yeah, I think so as well.
Yeah.
But it is nice to know. And then, yeah, right, that does confirm, like, I mean, I'm assuming, yeah, she's not all elves can't do this, or she's the
She
only
even
one that's
says-
ever figured it out.
She's even said, like, I don't know why you can do this. I don't know anybody who can. Right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, maybe the other elves just don't hold their breath.
Exactly. That no one else has tried it.
Yeah,
And maybe that will get unlocked at the end, then we'll have an army of invisible elves.
But then, so this whole MacGuffin, though, I think it is. Again, if you're gonna have a MacGuffin scene in a fantasy story, I do like that we went this road. It's not novel or anything. I mean, this is a very like archetypical thing for fantasy, but I do like that we're at least we're gonna go to an illusionist house, and so you already know they're gonna get in, they're gonna start seeing things because it's illusionist. But that's gonna help kind of develop the characters a little bit. We're gonna get more time with their trauma, which is exactly what we get. I think that's kind of the second most notable scene is this MacGuffin because of the fact that we find out about Jakob, we find out about Viga, and we find out about Sunny.
Yep.
Now, notably though, we don't find that much out about Baptiste, right? Maybe
Almost
a
nothing.
little bit, nothing. Yeah.
She might have like one little paragraph in there, but I did find myself going like, wasn't Baptiste with them? Like,
yep.
So yeah, maybe she just doesn't. She's just
Which
a
sounds
free
not-
spirit, and
Yeah, it's not time yet.
yeah.
But Balthazar is actually hanging back,
Mm-hmm.
as well as Baron Ricard, as well as Alex. And
They
as
got
well
their
as
walkie talkies.
Yeah, so
which are
yeah,
great.
They decapitate two recently dead twins to create walkie talkies.
Yeah.
But then of course Balthazar uses this opportunity to try to break his binding in the most epic way possible, and of course also fails in the most epic way possible to do so.
Brother Diaz.
Yeah,
His
Brother
big
Diaz-
moment. He punches him in the face.
Yeah. After he fails, yeah, that was.
Oh
it was
yeah, that's
Alex.
true. Yeah.
Brother Diaz tried to command him to stop, and then he suffocated Brother Diaz because technically the binding only applies to Alex.
Yeah.
And then Alex is the one who punches him in the face. He gets him good.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
You're right.
Yeah. And which is a really cool moment for Alex. They do also confirm that the previous sorcerer was interested in breaking the binding, never figured it out, died to a giant, which therefore for me kind of confirmed that Viga is the one who killed the previous vicar.
Yeah.
But that's really like a side thing. I think the important thing here is that we now get to finally learn the trauma and also the different.
This is my favorite
limitation.
scene. This was my favorite scene of part 2 was learning some I'm a character driven reader, and
Yep.
like I thought it was a perfect way of like, oh, it's just a side quest, but he's like, no, yeah, it is just a side quest, but I'm also going to teach you about these characters and make you connect with them and learn them, and like that's the perfect way to do it.
Mhm.
I thought, and yeah, really liked learning about the three that we got to learn about. Even though I would say Sunny was the lightest.
Yep.
I also thought it was funny that Sunny originally in part one, when they're on the road for the very first time and Alex is talking to Sunny for the first time, Sunny was like, yeah, I was in a circus. She was like, you were in a circus? And Sunny just glares at her and she's like, oh, you weren't in a circus. And like basically just Sunny's just like bullshitting her the whole time. She keeps
Yeah.
saying these crazy things and Alex is like, really? And Sunny's just like, no. But
Yeah.
in fact, Sunny was
Yeah,
in a
she was in the
circus.
circus.
She wasn't bullshitting, which is hilarious.
I always keep imagining her as like the Black Widow from Bugs Life. Like I just
From Bugs
now I
Life?
can't. Yeah, now I just can't stop seeing it because they're like a circus in Bugs
Yeah,
Life.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, she actually was in a circus, and so but we figure out that like this is essentially her trauma is that she never fits in.
She's
Right?
bullied. She's just straight up bullied,
Constantly,
and it's so
constantly.
sad.
Yep.
Because yeah, I didn't really know how I felt about Sunny after part one. We barely got any time with her, but man, I love Sunny, and
Yep.
she just wants to have, yeah, that's her thing. She just wants to be seen, which is such a good like thing with her, right? She's always invisible, and she's like, I just want to be seen, like for who I am. It's like, oh, Sunny, I just want to like hug her and be like, you
Yep.
are seen, you are, I see you.
Just hold your breath.
Yeah, just don't hold your breath, otherwise I can't. But I see you on the inside. Like
Yeah.
she's just a sweet little. I guess I don't know how old she is.
Yep.
A sweet elf.
Yeah, we don't know. That's the other thing. No, that was super cool, and like, yeah, it is. I think it is one of those things where she's the lightest reveal, but it is very relatable. It's a very like understandable character arc, and I think that I think that's important too, to talk about the fact that like she has this arc, but this is going to be contrasted to the fact that it's being reiterated that the church's current stance is that elves don't have souls.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it literally like she is essentially being propped up as like kind of character where like there isn't anything like I don't know if this is like Abercrombie's intention, but like I just want to clarify one thing. Like as far as like the idea of like souls comes, okay, the idea of like a soul is like really important in the book because Eudoxia is trying to find the place where the soul is,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and like in actual like in like a real life like church theology,
It's right here,
like which, yeah,
upper right cheek.
right.
So they say.
Yeah. Well, like in actual church, like theology, which is like rooted in prior to like Christian church, like rooted in Greek thinking. So like literally like 2,300 years of human existence, like plants have a soul. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So to like say that the elves don't have a soul is to say that they are worth dirt. Okay.
Yeah.
They are worth less than the grass you step on.
Mm-hmm.
The grass you step on has a soul.
Yep.
Elves do not.
Yeah.
So like that is a like hugely critical statement. And also especially for the devils because it's like, well, they're kind of supposed to be there for redemption. There can be no redemption for a creature without a soul.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And so like so this is like I think when you contrast those two things and then they're both given to us in this part, again, I think it makes her story like very palatable and very palpable too. And so it was really cool. I personally I did like that one. My favorite one was Jakob's story. I thought that was a really cool story. That his curse is actually in a substance a real curse, right? It's not a blessing. He cannot die, but he does suffer the pain and injury of all of his deaths. So he is slow. He is scarred. He is losing hearing. He is losing sight. And like everything aches all the time.
Yep.
I'm sure his knees probably ache every time it rains, right?
Yeah.
And so this is essentially his problem. But like one of the other things that he has to bear is the burden of the fact that he was on a crusade. He had to be a leader among men. And basically, even though they knew everything was against them, even though they knew it was just what like basically everything they had to deal with was terrible. But he could never falter. He could never show doubt. He could never show any weakness at all because that could be ruin.
Mm-hmm.
and then he has to go up against who I think was his commander, right? Like it was,
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
yeah. And his commander is basically just like no, uh, like we're doing this basically for ourselves. Like we're gonna root out the weak is what we're gonna do. And Jakob's like, no, that's not what this is about. He's like, I have my oaths, and like I will fulfill them. And the guy's just like, all that is like pointless. It's
Mm-hmm.
utterly pointless. And so we get this like moment where Jakob just decides, like, okay, well, if that's the case, we're gonna fight.
Yep.
And so now he has to, essentially implied, like he basically has to bear the weight of the fact that like he lost all those men.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And he was.
And
We find out he was turned on from a witch.
yep.
And I can't remember. At some point, I want to say I thought that his oaths were almost like a binding oath. Like at some point, I think isn't he obligated to be honest?
Yep.
And at some point, like he can like tell half truths, or no. It's at some point someone answers for him.
He lets other people lie for him.
Yeah,
okay.
exactly. He lets other
Yeah.
people lie for him.
Mhm.
Yeah, really like Jakob's backstory, and I want to know more about like what are these other oaths.
Yeah.
We found out the witch was his wife, right?
Yeah.
One of his wives. He married the
maybe.
witch. I think he married the witch,
Yeah. Yeah.
if I remember.
But I think the oaths do have power. It seems like.
Yeah.
So that's kind of interesting.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, I can't remember specifically with. Yeah.
And there was a Pope assassination. He was at some point they implied earlier that he was the one that assassinated a Pope, but in this time we got confirmation that he was not the one that actually assassinated the Pope, or someone he worked with or something like that.
Yep.
But he was part of it, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's how he got caught and that's how he's working for the devils. I'm not sure.
It seems like, right? It seems like.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so that's a really interesting kind of trauma, but also kind of a you might say like a challenge for him, right? That he has to overcome.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that it's the oaths thing does again, like I think this is for me like where the beauty of Joe Abercrombie's writing comes through. Like what makes it so awesome is he can give you these things and you can like look at them and be like, oh, that's kind of like archetypical. But at the same time, it comes to a head in such a cool way. So we'll get like in the ship scene, we'll get with Jakob where the oaths come back up and he's like, I never took an oath to fight fair because that would have been stupid.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just like
great.
stuff like that. It's just like that's really good.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And then lastly, Viga, who's arguably maybe the most traumatic. Like young girl gets like bitten by a werewolf and then like publicly dragged through the streets, and she accidentally kills people because she can't. We had find out at some point. I can't remember if it was this part or part one, but she is with Alex, which by the way we also forgot to mention that she loves fucking, and on the pilgrimage while Rickard was around like suckling on blood, she was just having sex with everybody, which is hilarious.
And people are like, how do you do it? And she's like, well, I just show them my thigh. They're like, that's it. Like, that's it.
I spread my legs for him, and that's all I need. Which is great. I mean, she's a great character, but hers is a pretty traumatic past of, she's just a young girl working on a ship, and they get to an island basically, and then a werewolf attacks her and turns her into a werewolf, and then she doesn't have really. At a certain point, when the wolf wants to come out, it comes. It's very the Hulk. It's like an uncontrollable, like you need to get away from me when I turn this way because I cannot control myself, kind of thing. And so what the village that she's a part of does is drag her up to the top of this cliff, and they chain her up, and then they just tattoo her entire body. Like, and that's kind of how. And she's begging and crying. She doesn't understand. She's a young girl. She doesn't get it at this point, I don't think. She knows. She's probably been told you killed these people, but it seems like when she's, especially because the first time we meet Viga, we get her inner thoughts, and it is very primal. Like, I want the good meat. That's really what she thinks. And as she morphs back into human, she's like, thirsty, I'm thirsty. And then once she settles back into human form, she has more human
Yeah.
thoughts. And so yeah, it is very much like I don't know what I did, and now you're chaining me up and tattooing me in front of everyone naked, and
Yep.
yeah, it's a pretty traumatizing. And then she ends up killing all her shipmates too because the wolf comes out and she can't
Yep.
control it.
Yep.
So
And I
really like
think
her past.
yeah, and I think that it just develops her in such a cool way where like her sort of approach to life sort of makes sense. Of like if you know she's a werewolf, when she goes werewolf, she'll kill people, and she really doesn't have a lot of control over it, and it's not a part of her that she can really change.
Mm-hmm.
Although she is trying to like, as she puts it, muzzle the wolf,
Mm-hmm.
and so she has this sort of mantra of like living second by second and just like not ever trying to remember the past, and it's like her idea of like being clean. It's just like you can't hold on to past things because the past is always going to be trauma. Like for her, her past will always be blood.
Yeah.
Right.
And
And
even
so,
she had that other mantra too. It's like there's a whole chapter where her mom always kind of like berates her. And it's
yeah,
like, you were like this even before the bite. Even before
yeah,
the bite, you were
yeah,
bad in this way.
yeah.
Even before the bite. And so,
And that's
yeah.
her gimmick, which is, I thought, really cool. Cause like Balthazar has the whole thing, like, I'm a magician, I'm, his name. And then her gimmick becomes, right, like, oh, but it was like this before the bite,
Mm-hmm. Even
which
before
we,
the bite.
which we don't actually know if that's true. Like for her, it might just be her like self-criticism.
Yeah. Or she heard it
Uh,
from her mom so many times. It's
Yep.
just like, yeah, I guess that is how
Yeah.
I was.
Yeah.
But
And
she,
so I thought that was really, really neat. And
yeah.
so yeah, so that was the three people, right? I don't think we get anybody else's because really we don't get much on Baptiste.
No,
So
we don't get much on Baptiste.
yeah.
Just probably another job that she did.
Yep.
But I did find it really interesting before we move on to the final scene of part 2, which we don't really need to spend that much time on it, I don't think, because a lot of it's just kind of action. But they are having in this house when they're having they're reliving their memories, which is a really interesting like part for the illusionist. It's like forcing them into their trauma and to relive their trauma, and Vega is like really experiencing it, and it's very traumatic. And then when they all come out of it, they're kind of all discussing it with each other, and she just immediately is like, "No, I don't remember." Like it's just out of sight, out of mind. She's just like put it in the past again, which I find interesting. I don't know if I love it because I do want her to want to feel those things, and maybe she does, and she's just repressing, and that's her way of doing that. And it was like a funny little bit, but I would have rather it have been like it does like haunt her more. I mean, it definitely haunts her still sometimes, but not as much as like I think Jakob and Sonny coming out of that are like feeling it, and she's just like, I'm ready to have sex again, basically. Like, so I didn't love that, but hers was also probably my favorite backstory of the three. But then
Yeah, and
Jakob, then Sonny. I think Sonny just
Yep.
wasn't fleshed out enough.
Yep.
But I love Sonny.
Yeah.
She's so good.
Yeah, and I don't know if I took it as like she actually doesn't remember. I mean, I know it's kind of implied that way, but it almost to me seems more like there's a combination of things of like I think the wolf has its toll, and then I think that there's a kind of like a way that she represses these things.
Yeah, that makes
And so
sense.
I think she just has a temperament that's very much focused on like always thinking, really never thinking of the past or the future, just always thinking about like the right
The
now.
current, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep. So, but
All
I
right.
guess we'll find out.
Let's get to the final scene, which is, I will say up front, my least favorite part of the book so far was the final scene, a very long scene. I do like that it's a naval fight. They're on a ship.
Mhm.
They're heading towards Troy, and of course we know they're not going to make it there safely. They get rammed
That
by
was a great way to start it, though. That
just
was,
by getting rammed by
yeah, that was pretty cool, right? Like the
yeah.
whole setup of like you're taking on, you just got rammed, you're taking
Mhm.
on water, you set a fire on the ship because might as well add more chaos to the mix.
Mhm.
Um,
Their
so,
ship starts sinking.
Yep.
And we get introduced to Constance, the second. I don't remember. I almost want to say he's like the oldest. He
no,
says
no, he's like the youngest.
I thought Marcian was the youngest because he calls
I
Marcian
don't
his
think
younger
so.
brother. I think at some point.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, because Marcy's younger brother, he's like always throwing tantrums and stuff, and
mhm.
so yeah.
But he's
Yeah, so-
very charismatic, like
Mhm.
almost like I don't know how, almost like a mustache twirling like
Yeah,
villain.
he's like one of the Three Musketeers gone wrong.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
really is, and
yeah,
I really
yeah.
liked our setup with him.
Mm.
And then he kind of sends more of these experiments, these monstrosities,
Yeah,
but these are all like the fish faction, which is
yeah,
fun. Like it's the ocean faction. We got fish people and kraken people and stuff like that. But our party gets split into groups of two mostly. So we got Balthazar and Baptiste who are underneath the ship. We've got Sunny and Alex who are just trying to escape. And then we've got Viga and Brother Diaz who are trying to keep the wolf suppressed mostly.
yeah.
And then Jakob's by himself dueling
Fighting.
Constance. Yep.
Yeah, the Viga Brother Diaz interaction was kind of funny because
I love it.
she has a weapon and then she just uses the weapon to kill somebody. She's like, another weapon.
Oh my gosh, yeah, like 8 times, and Brother Diaz is like,
He's just trying to
you go.
scrounge whatever he can. He's like,
Yeah.
here you go. And she's like, another one. She's
Weapon.
like, I just gave you one.
Yep. I also love with Brother Diaz. So at a certain point, she does. Brother Diaz is like, look, we gotta let the wolf out here. Like it's time, and so she does. She goes on her rampage, kills like all the other cannon fodder on the other ship, and then Brother Diaz, he has like this moment. I envision him like having this like vision of when Viga first came out, and Jakob was like, Viga, this behavior is unacceptable, and like that kind of right. It's like the Hulk with Black Widow. She says like whatever, sun's going down or whatever she says.
Yeah, sun's going down, big guy.
Yeah, sun's going. It's basically that, and so that worked. And so I could just envision it. Brother Diaz being like, I'm gonna do it. He's like, Viga, this behavior is unacceptable, and Viga's just like. Like it does not work at all. And then he's like, oh shit, she's coming for me. He starts going for her, and which is hilarious. I just love it that it's like this is his moment. He's got a moment, he's gonna do good, and it just whiffs, like completely whiffs. Which is also, it's just notable, right? So it seems like Jakob is the only one. There's some tie there that he's got the control over her. Yeah, really, this whole fight is a lot of cannon fodder, which is what I like to call it. Of there are all these monstrosities that we don't know and we don't really care about. We just know they're bad. They're trying to kill our heroes, and they die in the process. I would say the most interesting to me was the one with Balthazar and Baptiste under the ship, because
that fight was cool.
Yeah, so because we meet another one of the like minions of Eudoxia, and he's kind of the opposite of Balthazar, where he can like he pricks you and then he controls the living. So he pits Baptiste and Balthazar against each other, and they get out of it in a fun way, which was good. And then Alex and Sunny are just escape. They're on the they're like way up in the rafters or whatever. I don't know what you call it on a ship, but like the one ship is currently sinking. The mast, and they're trying to cross over to the ship that is not sinking. And I think eventually, well, so where does everyone? Actually, sorry. Let's talk about the fight with Duke and not Duke, Jakob and Constance, and then we can just talk about where everyone ends up at the very end, because we do end on a pretty major cliffhanger.
Yep. So, but I do want to quickly say that the fight was pretty cool. I do like how, with Balthazar, I do like how, I think this is one of those things that kind of shows with Balthazar, essentially like to date, he's actually a lot more versatile than he would like you to believe. I like how he gets into this fight. And so then essentially this guy who controls the living tries to basically control Balthazar as well. And so he's able to do so, but in the act of doing so, Balthazar is then able to basically hide away his consciousness and then control Baptiste. And so he uses this sort of like other sorcerer to basically control Baptiste's arm to then stab the sorcerer. And I just thought that was like really neat how he was like in the final moment, like basically able to like give control of his body to then help Baptiste like take control of hers, which again just shows him he's a lot more flexible, because he's always saying, that's not one of my good arts. That's not a science. That's not a science I'm really good at. But then he's able to to do all these things, right?
Yeah, I think I kind of
And,
missed that.
yeah,
I kind of just read it as like, right, he was fighting back, his mentally fighting back against this other guy, and to the point where the sorcerer had to fully concentrate on Balthazar, which broke the spell for Baptiste. And so yeah, I think I just read it as Baptiste regains conscious and sits up and stabs him. But I like it. It's cool. Yeah, I didn't even think about it being Balthazar
mhm,
working through him, which is really cool.
yeah,
That
yeah,
was my favorite fight as well. And I
mhm,
think the reason why, going into my critique of part 2 or this battle,
yep,
is that there are stakes, right? Baptiste and
mhm,
Balthazar, I don't want either of them to die. And they're
yep,
fighting, to the death. I'm like, well, what's going to happen? I am interested because I want to know how to get out of this. Where
yep.
everybody else, it's like, does any part of me now, especially with, Jakob, it's like, no part of me believed Jakob was going to lose that fight.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, Sonny put it the best, right?
Hmm?
Which is
Oh,
like, I
Sonny
think
put.
Sonny's, yeah, I was just Sonny's put it the best of just like throughout that part 2, we just get this sort of idea between his interactions with Sonny of just like he can't die,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's just like, I mean, now the ship whole, like the whole ship setting
Mm-hmm.
is, I mean, good just because, like, I mean, there's at least some thought that, well, he might go down with the ship, but I mean, even he says like, I've done this before, and I think that's like that is one of the best gimmicks with Yakov, is because like it's classic for there to be like one-liners and stuff,
Yeah, there's a
but I
lot
mean,
of quips and
yeah, yeah, but like literally with Yakov, it's just like the whole mantra is just like when you've been through it this many times,
you've seen
you know,
everything, you've done everything.
yeah,
Yeah.
the quips don't even matter anymore. And I mean, literally, like one of the pieces in there was just like, it's a testament to humanity that we've run out of jokes before we've run out of people trying to kill
Yeah,
Yakov.
yeah.
Like,
So I do like how he from the get go he's like it's clear that Constance is a very trained fighter. He's like,
yep,
I'm gonna lose this fight. So it's more about like how do we still come out on top, and yeah, it's by like taking the L, dying,
yep,
but in the process taking him with you because it doesn't matter if you die, you can come back, but he can't. And so I
yep,
like the resolution, and I like how I was wondering like how is he gonna kind of pull this off, and it was a good end to Constance,
well, it's
good
fitting for
death.
Constance too because he kept talking about like the whole the pomp and circumstance of the duel, right? And so
Mm.
there's just sort of like this sort of like weird almost chivalry to it.
Yep.
And so, but then Yakov's just like, no, I don't fight fair.
Yeah,
So
exactly. He's like,
yeah,
sometimes you have to like if I fight fair, I lose. So
yeah,
I'm not gonna do that because I can't. So,
yep,
but then yeah, where's I think from what I remember, because again it's been a little bit. So Alex can't swim, notably, which we
yep,
find out on the ship for the first
yep.
time, and
But Sonny's like, we got to jump. Right.
yeah,
Yeah, we get the classic joke from Sonny, right? If you have a better idea, I'm all ears.
yeah, which is hilarious. Like yeah, and like yeah, I love it because she's so happy with herself. She's like, I made a
Yeah.
joke. I made a joke, and Alex is like, "It's not the time." Like, she's like balancing for her life on on this mass, but they go in, they go
They
in
go
in
in.
the drink,
Yep.
and
Um,
I think everybody does. Doesn't the other ship also start sinking?
yes, because
The fire or something.
they notably throw the basically the ship's version of a lighthouse, right? So
Mm.
they maintain a lamp full of whale oil at the top.
Yes.
So
Yep.
basically, they keep it lit because in the daytime doesn't matter, but at nighttime, then the ships can see them. And that gets knocked into the flames they already started, which then burst. And so now we have. Now we were saying before that um, Brother Diaz and Vega were on the other ship. I don't think that was true. I
Oh,
don't
they
know if
never
they
went to
went
the
to
other
their ship
ship.
because when the lantern drops, it's Brother Diaz that sees it, and it
Mm.
hits the fire and explodes, and that's what knocks Vega and Brother Diaz into the water. That's what actually what keeps it like.
I
Gets
thought they
them
went to the other ship and then came because when he like goes to calm her
Oh,
down, she turns back. She's like,
he
"No, I'm
runs.
a wolf,"
That's right.
and he runs
Yeah,
back and she's chasing him.
exactly. And then that lantern drops and explodes, and then
Mm.
that's kind of what knocks them into the water.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of basically speeds up the whole ship sinking thing, right?
Yep.
And so we've got 4 people now in the water, and then
I don't
with
remember Balthazar and Baptiste.
well, so now with the water after they defeated that sorcerer, then the water like they're at the they're actually where like the ship got rammed.
Yeah.
And so they
Because
get
their
kind of
whole fight
swept
was
in.
already at like chest level water.
Exactly, and they sort of get swept in.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course Jakob, we get this really crazy cliffhanger where he gets pinned to the deck by the sword as the ship goes down, and then the part two ends with the water taking him
Yeah.
as he's pinned to the deck, which
Which
is
is a
just
great ending.
yeah, great ending. And again, it's just one of those things where it's like, well, if you were gonna try to, imply that he could be dead, I mean, that is like one of the ways you could do it.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, I also this is for me also coming off of just having watched the movie The Old Guard a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't mention this in my review, but that one of the elements of that movie that's kind of horrifying. I mentioned in my review that it's about people who can't die, so they're essentially like Jakob. But one of the elements that's horrifying is like one of the things they have to avoid is being captured. Because if people capture them, then they can put them in a box and then throw it into the ocean. And then the problem with that is they can't die. So like literally what would happen is they would run out of air, they would suffocate, come back to life, suffocate,
Yeah,
come
it's
back
like
to
prolonged
life.
torture.
They would just essentially be like suffocated to death for eternity.
Yeah. Brutal.
And so that's what they avoid. So like that's the thing with Jakob is like he does die, he just doesn't stay dead.
Yeah.
So it's like this is kind of brutal. And of course he finally gives us a one-liner.
What is that? I don't remember.
Yeah, it ends with him coughing and he's like, "Well, now this is a pickle."
I like it.
Yeah.
Well, all right,
we
nice.
get a one-liner.
Let's go into we're at 2:10 and 2 hours and 10 minutes. Let's talk about our likes and dislikes. And so now we are caught up. We know nothing about the future of this book. Yep. So likes and dislikes. Overall, what did you think of the part?
I really like this part. It's definitely my favorite part of the book so far, specifically because of the pilgrimage and then going through Venice. I just thought that was a great character work through that, and it was so fun and had so many good memorable moments. I mean, for me, this is the thing that makes it like worthy of the movie of the screen. Like I'm excited to see what James Cameron does with this.
Yeah, I cannot wait.
Because I think it'll just be fun. I mean, I grew up like watching League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and for me, this could be like the next fun like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yep.
Hopefully, it's not the next Suicide Squad. That would be terrible, but we don't need that. The world does not need that.
No.
but so I thought the character work was really great. I was glad to kind of get to see a lot more of their skills, their trauma, their downsides, and kind of see. I'm excited to see where it goes from here. I thought the cliffhanger was really great. Yep. My major dislike is just, and maybe this is just how it needs to go because really the villains don't matter. But it is the case too that like so far all of the villains are chump. Basically, like they're just there to like introduce themselves as like almost in an anime fashion.
Yep.
And then they get killed.
Yep.
And we still don't know anything about the other sons. So we're not doing anything to really build up the villains, so to speak. It's just these like sort of
they're just like they're almost just like henchmen. They don't even feel like villains so much as just like mini bosses on the way to the boss.
Yeah. So all we really know about them is like their sort of gimmick. Like Marcian is essentially throwing a tantrum in his big armor. Constance is a egotistical duelist, and that's basically it. Yep. And like so everything's just sort of fodder. That's kind of my major dislike. I would like to see in part 3 that we build somebody up. Like I do want because if Eudoxia ends up being like the villain at the end of all of this, or if like Michael, we still don't have a whole lot to build them up, right? Nope. So I would like to see that in part 3.
Yeah. I'm kind of right there with you. Yeah, I liked this part. I thought it was very good. My least favorite part was the big battle at the end, and it was, for reference, this entire part was like 115 pages or so. That last battle was 40 pages of that, and I agree. I just don't know if I feel the stakes are there for that large of a battle. Like I didn't fear for any of our characters' lives, which is fine, really. Other than Baptiste and Balthazar, I thought it's one of those like maybe, and I think that's why that was the most interesting part for me is because there were stakes there. Where the rest, really truly is just cannon fodder, which is okay for small little fight scenes and stuff. But when they're this long, like, do I think Joe's writing of action is good? Yes. but I just find my eyes glazing over because I'm like, all right, we're 30 pages in. Like, I just want to know what happens
Yep.
next. And I totally agree. I think the villains, and the thing that frustrates me about this is that like Constance was so charismatic, and like I would have loved to spend more time with him.
Yep.
He could have been a great villain.
Yep.
And he's just like in and out,
Yep.
which I don't love that. And I hope you're right. I hope it's not just like, all right, then we're gonna see the third, and then we're gonna see the fourth, and then we're gonna get to the boss that actually matters.
Matter.
Matters. I hope it's not that, because I've talked with you about this, about that's my biggest problem with like the MCU and stuff, is like you have got to give me a good villain that I almost want to root for, right? Or just like feel connected with. And so like what I'd love to see is, if we do think it's Duke Michael, maybe we get some scenes with Duke Michael meeting Eudoxia over in Troy, and them like kind of scheming and stuff, so that when we finally get there, we get more character work and something that we know is waiting for them, and like that kind of thing. It makes it tense instead of just like, all right, here's the third one, here's the fourth one, and then we're there. So I'm not loving that. Humor, I think, is good. Again, not every joke is hitting for me, but enough are to where I'm enjoying it. I don't feel bombarded with jokes, which I was worried about. And then, Joseph Edward. Character work is this thing, and I think that's where part 2 shines. I think that's where this whole book is going to shine. I love the characters so far. I can't wait to spend more time with them. I'm really curious to get like more Balthazar time and more Baptiste time, and I think it was genius of him to give us Balthazar as a new devil, because we're getting being a devil through the eyes of someone who is new to the process, and I find that really interesting, instead of just like they're all kind of veterans. But yeah, overall positive. I do think direction we're going, this will probably be my least favorite Joe Abercrombie, but that's still like, right, it's like the way I feel about Stephen King. My least favorites are still like 4 stars. I think this is still going to be a book I really like, but it does have that just like quest of the week feel of like, we're going to wrap up this quest, and that's that, which, to be fair, that's exactly what Joe said he was going for. So it's like, it's hard to knock it for being what it is. It's just more of like a taste thing. That's not quite as to my taste, but I'm okay with it because the character work is so good. Like, I love the character work. So I would love just more character work and less action in a book full of action. So,
well, at the very least, I'll balance you out, because this will be my favorite Joe Abercrombie book.
you go.
So, because
There
it
you
will
go.
be the only one I've read. So
It's all
there we
uphill
go.
from here. Yeah. All right, let's talk about predictions real quick, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah. So
Sorry, unless you had something else you wanted to say.
I have one last thing, but I can
Yeah.
say it at the end as we wrap up.
Okay.
So predictions. I want to see whether or not Alex tries to give herself up or leave the Devils, because I think that would be that's a pretty common signal that we see in stories like this, and I think that would indicate for us what direction Alex is going in. But also, if we don't see that can tell us something too. So
Yeah.
I really want to see, and I think if it's going to happen, it's going to happen in this part.
Okay.
Because there's a concept in the movies called like the tent pole. I used to think it was called the tadpole moment. Don't ask me why. It's called the tentpole moment because it's like it's the moment when things get really personal. And for movies, it happens like at a very specific moment. And so, if you watch a movie, I can't remember if it's like at the hour mark, or I think it's at the hour mark. But like, go to the hour mark of any movie, and about that time is like the tentpole moment. So, for example, go to the first Avengers movie, go to the hour mark. Guess what happens at the hour mark? Do you even remember what happens in the Avengers movie, Matt? It's okay if you don't.
There's aliens in New York or something.
There definitely are. But yeah, for those of you who remember the different scenes in the Avengers, you probably can pick out exactly what happens at the 1 hour mark. It's when Agent Coulson gets killed.
Spoilers!
And then, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Thanos snap. Okay, we're back. Okay, so we rewinded past the spoiler. No. So, but like that's the tentpole moment. So for me, like, you could maybe make the argument that this is like the tentpole moment, like with Jakob going down, but I don't think it is.
Yeah, I would
right? Like
agree.
if I if we're writing a movie here and we want a tentpole moment where it gets personal, and now the characters and the audience are both hooked,
Hmm.
I think that comes in part three, and I think it has to come around Alex. So I think it's going to be interesting. Is where's the tentpole moment for Alex in all of this? Because I don't think we're there yet. I think right now we just have a scared girl who doesn't know what else to do,
Yeah,
and so I'm
and
waiting
it's
to see if
currently
we can.
drowning.
That certainly puts a damper on things.
Yeah. A
Yeah,
damp.
yeah.
Or,
Damper. Okay, yeah,
yeah,
but yeah.
that's your prediction. I like it. Yeah,
Mm.
I think I would tend to agree with that. I didn't write any down, but I think I'm just gonna carry some of mine over from part one. I think, right, this vial of blood. It has to be key. It's got
Mhm.
to be key here somewhere. And my other one that I think we're definitely gonna see it is I think Vega and Brother Diaz are going to have a sex scene. I'm locking it in. I think it's gonna. I think he's gonna give into his urges, and I think it's gonna be very, very funny. Um,
Okay.
yeah, that's my prediction. And then, um, yeah, I mean, other than that, like some softball predictions, I think Balthazar at the end is gonna fall into his role and almost find some joy in it. I think he will kind of become a good guy, and I kind of hope one of them dies. I hope we just find some stakes here. I don't.
Well, the whole I should have quit after Barcelona, and the kind of tension between Balthazar and Baptiste is a little bit worrying. I
Yeah,
will say.
you
Yeah.
think? You think in a romantic? You think there's some romance maybe brewing between them?
Well, because we had that whole scene where he was like in his mind trying to plot out his revenge, and then all of a sudden he was spanking her in his mind. He's like, "Wait,
Mm-hmm.
hold on, wait, what's going? What?
Yeah.
How did I land up here?" You know?
Yeah. There was one part where I think it's during the pilgrimage I found it really funny is like someone addresses him by maybe it is in this fantasy like she addresses him by his full name and he
Yep.
gets off on it. He loves it. He loves it that someone addresses him by his full name, and I found that
Yeah.
very, very funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's it. Is there anything else you want to speak on as
Yeah.
far as just experience or?
Well, the last thing I just wanted to add was, as far as the comedy goes,
Mhm.
I actually personally, again, I don't know his normal pacing, but I personally really love the comedy of the book. And I don't think personally, I just don't think it's too much. I think it's right on brand. And it made me think a lot about, I don't know, who your top comedians would be, but like for me, my top comedian is probably still Kevin Hart.
Mm.
Even if he's like humor is not really to your style, I think as a comedian, objectively, he is like one of the better comedians out there. And he had an interview where he talked about how he got into comedy, and he talked about how he had a mentor who told him that no matter what you do, even if you're not funny, the most important thing is by the end of the show, you have to make the audience feel like they're in on a joke.
Mm.
And so that's why, like, if you watch his like comedy sketches, like you can go watch them on Netflix and stuff. He will typically have like a recurring joke
Yeah,
that he
big
brings back
callback.
around, and he'll develop it because it makes the audience feel like they're in on something. And he
Yep.
does a really phenomenal job of developing something with the audience that will then lay the foundation for a joke later
Mm-hmm.
that you will only understand because you were there, because you were watching the comedy,
Yep.
and it will make you feel like you're in on the joke.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what Joe Abercrombie does with his comedy that just makes it so good is all of the jokes that are like, I think that all the jokes that he thinks are going to land, at least that's what it seems like to me. But a lot of the jokes just feel like they're good comedy because you feel like you're in on the joke.
Yep.
Like Yakov not wanting to do one-liners or quips, but then doing a pickle.
Mm-hmm.
This is a pickle, right? Like you just have these moments where it's even if it's not like, oh my gosh, this is so funny.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just you have that moment of like, oh, I'm in on this joke. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I've like I get to know something,
Mm-hmm.
like, and I think that's really great. Like it's really good writing, and so for me, like this is just great comedy. Like that's just the way to do it.
Yeah. I
And
think
I
so too.
and I think people can make the argument, oh, it's really gimmicky, but it's like, yeah, but he's kind of doing the gimmicky thing in such a way that like
It's so
he wants you to,
intentional. Yeah.
yeah,
That's the
he
thing. It's
wants you
like
to
it's
be in on it.
very intentional. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and
yeah, I
so.
think he's delivering exactly what he promised.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, and I'm excited to see more of it. I think it will. This is why I want to put it here. I think there will be a more serious note in part three.
Yeah.
So
At least
I
by
think
the
we'll
end of the
definitely
book
get.
for
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. So I think we will get that moment where it's just like, no, this is that moment where things are going to turn a little bit, and we're going to focus on. And because like here's the thing about comedy is like what makes a really good comedic story is there has to be stakes.
Yep.
And like that is the thing that we're missing. And so
Yep.
I think that's going to be that's where the moment's going to turn is when all of a sudden there's stakes.
Yeah, it's a good call.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll find out. So I think this has proved that we probably could do a video per part because
Okay.
we're horrible. We're horrible
Yeah.
at doing short videos. We just
Yeah,
can't.
yeah.
We cannot do it.
Well, my students would tell you it's probably just not possible for me. So
Yeah, we are incapable. So, but yeah, that's part 1 and 2 of the Devils. If you are reading the Devils, let us know. I'd be down to chat about it. I think it's really fun. If you hate the Devils, you can tell us that too. That's okay. But
That's
we'll
okay.
hate you. Just kidding. No, we won't.
Hey, you may have to go to the Church of the Holy Expediency. So we'll we'll have to discuss it.
All right. Anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
No, just to say thank you to everybody, especially if you've been here for this long. But yeah, just thank you for joining us for this. Like Matt said, love to hear your opinions on the Devils and just be able to talk with you about it more. We probably, my guess is at this point, just seeing what happened, we'll probably get to the end of part 3, but like, yeah, there's enough about here to talk about, especially if we do get like a moment, right? Like where things really turn and the stakes really come up, then yeah, I mean, we may just, even if it ends up being a 40-minute video, like we made like that. If that happens, we probably just need to talk about it, because it's gonna be. I'm expecting it to be cool.
Yeah.
And I'm expecting to get pretty excited about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm really looking forward to part 3 and really looking forward to talking more about it with you, Matt. And I'm really glad to have everybody here, kind of sharing in this. And I think it's gonna be great.
I think so too. Well, awesome. Thank you for joining us. We are Hobby Vomit.
Yeah.
I'm gonna accidentally do it for real one time, but yeah, this is Hobby Vomit. I'm Matt. This is
Ian.
And we will catch you on the next video. Goodbye.
Bye.